Hey guys. So I think we should probably be live right now. A little bit of an impromptu stream with just myself tonight. Haven't done one by myself in a little bit, and I thought it would be good to just kind of been getting lots of questions on my Instagram and Discord, Patreon, and lots of other places. And I thought it would be good, and also just in the comment sections. And I thought it'd be good to maybe do a Q&A tonight where I really is just me and can kind of dive into answering a bunch of questions if people have them. How's it going, Patrick Cyrus? I'm going to try to really hang out with the chat tonight. Christian Diaz, Stilo Mac, Tim4 Elf, Toasty699, Jeremy Judkins, Hikai, Alec, Curdle, Northwoods TCG, how you doing? Dog Green Shiz Collectibles. How are you? Call Rafi. So I'm actually Rafi and I will definitely do some videos soon. I hope together and just like hang out more. I'm moving back at the end of this month, so just in a couple weeks, and we're gonna be like living in the same town again or very close to each other. So I think we'll probably be able to definitely like make more videos and hang out if you guys want that. Rafi and I are still, of course, good friends. Okay. Let's dig into some questions. So I'm thinking, I have Streamlabs right now. I'm looking at. Okay. Hopefully I do not lose the chat. All right, let's do this. Okay, so Stilo Max starts us off tonight and says, Jake, please touch more on stocks and crypto. Why do you think the stock market is bleeding right now? Also, with interest rates going up, how much will it affect the housing market? So, don't want to talk too much about any of those topics, as this is mostly a Pokemon channel, and I'm not a financial advisor. I was on the phone with my dad last night, actually, who is a financial advisor, actually, and has been following the market very closely for the last like 20 to 30 years. And he shared with me a lot of thoughts, and we had an interesting conversation on it, about what's been going on in our portfolios. And a lot of the takeaway was I don't know if there's any specific I feel like sharing. Interest rates going up, how much will affect the housing market? Again, I don't know. I just wouldn't be the best person to ask or talk about those things. I could certainly share my opinions, but I don't know how much they're worth on those types of things, but definitely stuff that I am interested in, and I consume not too much online content about it, but more talk to my father and read books and financial reports and listen to conference calls. Let's see. Pac Menace and Ray. Jepst, nice to see ya. Stephen Lee, going brave. Curdle54 says, DBZ Score thoughts. Huge fan of DBZ Score. Still love it. I feel pretty satisfied with my collection. There are a few cards I'm still going to pick up at some point. I'm looking for some mint copies of some of the more desirable limited cards that are quite hard to find. The DBZ Score market has been doing really well. So it went up quite a bit this year with everything else, but unlike Pokemon recently, DBZ hasn't really been going down too much. There was a period where some of the booster boxes I saw went down, and some things were a bit got very expensive, but that was after they sort of went up 5-6 times in value from where I was buying it initially when I started talking about it. So I would say from where I bought in, everything is, anywhere between double to triple to sort of quadruple the price. Kind of similar to the Harry Potter, interestingly, in terms of how much it's moved up. And some items have retraced in Harry Potter as well, but not not nearly to where they were. And I think the prices on a lot of these things make a lot of sense. I mean, particularly the ultra rares in DBZ Score. The ultra rares are so insanely rare. It does not mix. The price of of Dragon Ball Super compared to DBZ Score is wild. It is crazy. I think DBZ Score, and not to say that Dragon Ball Super is overvalued, because I think those cards are gorgeous and really cool, but compared to that, there's a lot of value there, given how rare and difficult those cards are to pull. 1 in 12 cases, 1 in 12 boxes, and the ultra rares are scenes from the anime with really cool holo foil patterns, which I like. So big fan of DBZ Score. I never plan on selling what I have. Really big collector of it. I want to kind of complete my collection. It's also a lot more doable to really complete a significantly cool collection in DBZ versus Pokemon, because there's so much Pokemon and they continue to make it, unlike Score, which is a dead TCG CCG. So that's what I would say about it. The grading market's interesting. I have a bunch of cards I'm eventually going to grade. Not a lot of grading in DBZ. A lot of people who are just sort of not that into grading. So you can get really deals on mint stuff and grade it, I think. Christian Diaz says, Jake, can you elaborate a little more on pop reports compared to other collectibles? For example, 1,250 PSA 9 first edition fossil Dragonite holos. Is that too much for the market to absorb? Sure. Yeah. I mean, so compared to other collectibles. So I mean, when we look at like sports cards, not only are there certain like base sports cards that blow that pop report out of the water. We're talking about thousands after thousands after thousands of PSA 10s of base rookie, Luka, or base rookie Zion, these types of things. But there's a number of different card sets and card styles and companies printing that some sort of version of like a base rookie. And then all of like the one-of-ones, although they're one-of-ones in sports, there's, many one-of-one rookie autograph patch, type cards of each rookie. So there's actually quite a few of those. When you look at the amount of money in sports, there's so much more money in sports right now to be absorbing all of those cards at the prices that they're still managing to retain. So I think that if people continue to really enjoy the Pokemon hobby, and you see people enjoying it multiple generations, the prices today could be extremely low versus what they could be theoretically, but it's all the demand piece, right? 1,250 at, I don't know what they're going for, $500 for a PSA 9, maybe $600. They've been fluctuating quite a bit. Maybe it's down to $400, somewhere in there, probably $500-$600, I would think, maybe even a little bit higher for some of them. That isn't that much. I mean, there are lots of sports cards that alone are selling for $1 million, selling for $2 million, $2.5 million, and this is like one of the key cards in the Pokemon hobby. It's definitely, in terms of set cards in particular, this Dragonite Fossil First Edition. So, again, I think you do get into issues with condition rarity versus absolute rarity. Obviously, there are so many Dragonite First Edition fossil holo cards, way, way, way more than 1,250 in the world that have been able to grade a 9. So I don't know how all that's going to play out or play as an anchor, but on the price. But there's a lot of different possible trajectories into the future. It's part of why I tried to make that that video. The last video, just talking about how no expert, no matter how much experience they have in this, no matter how confident they seem or how optimistic they seem, in my personal opinion, as someone who I think has predicted the market very well up to this point, or reasonably well, just being extremely engaged in the hobby and using sort of just basic, market principles, understanding hype, understanding the factors that the fundamentals that actually create value in collectible items. I feel like there's a very wide trajectory that the hobby could move into. I think that because there's a lot, because it could go a lot higher, certain items could go a lot higher. If you think of it as like potentially a good investment, if that does, and could potentially outpace the stock market and these types of things, it's absolutely possible. Now, it's not something that I would be putting really important, crucial money into for your lifestyle. And I would not be trying to create, unless you are running a business and operating in this, and this is your passion and you're obsessed with it and you're constantly flipping and also taking cash and money out of it and you're building and building and building and you're limiting risk as you go along. I would not be putting, I would not be, unless you're that type of person, I would not be putting any significant amount of money in this hobby looking to like generate some sort of like long-term wealth for you. I think people who are giving that advice and continue to give that advice are very naive about the risks. And yeah, there's a lot less of them now. A lot of them have left the hobby or gotten quiet over the last few months. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense for people. Kai says he's diving headfirst into buying ultra rares. Yeah, it's fun. Eddie says, have you ever thought about collecting Ultimate Rare and Ghost Rare Yu-Gi-Oh cards? They're beautiful cards. Absolutely. I think that they're really cool. Difficult to pull, very difficult to grade, many of them. I think they're really cool cards, particularly some of the older ones. I think that those cards could do very well in the long run and are probably undervalued. But definitely not a Yu-Gi-Oh expert, but just from sort of my, just my experience in card markets and understanding sort of rarity and demand. And when I started looking really fairly deeply actually into the Yu-Gi-Oh market, that was one of the areas that stood out as potentially undervalued. Some Japanese stuff, some trophy cards seemed undervalued, and then certain, GX kind of middle era stuff seemed potentially undervalued if Yu-Gi-Oh really grows and sustains itself into the future again. Kind of similar to like the Level X Diamond and Pearl, some of the and Black and White, some of the stuff that's really blown up in large part due to rarity and retraced less than certain WotC stuff, for example. That although the WotC stuff really blew up and is still, I hear people spreading a lot of misinformation right now. There's not a single high demand WotC type holo card that is selling for less right now than it did even the summer of 2020. So I'm hearing some misinformation out there around that. The only cards that are selling less than they were before that period are like Hidden Fates. That's part of why I recommended and suggested buying. It's part of why understanding the price history and understanding the movements of things, and I'm not talking about sealed. I'm talking about like singles, particularly things like baby shinies and but even the Hidden Fates Charizard. There was a time when that card in PSA 10 was selling $1,200 all day, and then even some of the black labels, selling like what 10,000, 8,000, and then 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, repeatedly. So it shows you really what I was explaining all year, right, about how you should not be investing in any of this modern stuff. There's a ton of irrational exuberance. There's way too much supply that's going to come back, that's going to hit the market. But there's a time when that supply, there's good moments and there's good times when it doesn't mean that it's never going to be, speculatable or it's never going to go back up in price or that these things are not really enjoyed and loved. I mean, I think if the Pokemon hobby does well, 10 to 15 years, even 5 years from now, Hidden Fates is going to be one of these sets, in my opinion, that's really going to stand out, and particularly that whole shiny vault and people just collecting the shiny vault. I think more than anything else, I think that but hard to predict. Nobody knows, and I just think I look for when people are really excited about something, that's generally the time not to be buying it, and then when people kind of sour and get bored and these types of things, that's usually the time to buy something. And I could go into a lot more factors why, but shoot. Aiden says, what are your thoughts on CP6 hollows that aren't Charizard? I was picking up a few CGC 9s for 15 to 20 on the past PWCC auctions. Yeah, I mean, that's a much better buy, in my personal opinion. Well, first of all, yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's so many of those cards. They're pretty easy to pull. At $15 to $20 already graded, I don't think those are like terrible buys, right? I think I saw some go closer to like the $12, $13 mark. Of course, that's also going to depend on the holo. There's obviously a range there of popularity. I think if I'm getting them for like $9, $10, $11, I like them quite a bit more. This is an example of where the booster box is so insanely overpriced now. So as we talked about on this channel, and you know, it was not a genius thing to predict that whole, you know, and I said multiple times, that hundreds of times probably, that, you know, the most overvalued cards in the entire hobby were the evolutions, like singles and the graded evolutions cards, okay? Because so much supply was going to come back and was going to tank those. And what I would say time and time again is I don't know the effect that that's going to have on the booster box, because the booster box, you know, often it certainly never or almost never moves in a 1-to-1 ratio with the expected value of cards. Now, the expected value of the set should affect the prices of the booster boxes, but the expected value has absolutely tanked on that Zard, right? I made a video, which I never released, saying, you know, the worst card you could buy in the possible hobby. Maybe I'll show it someday. You know, and it was selling for like $1,200. A PSA 9 sold for $1,200, and now that card is, what, $100 in PSA 9? I'm not even sure what it is. Somewhere in there, you know, that's a 90+%. There's no other card that you know, that was that expensive that fell that much. And yet the box only fell from $1,000 to $700, which is not bad at all. I mean, when we look at, you know, and again, it went from $100 to $1,000, and then $1,000 down to $700, which is not bad at all, you know. And I think maybe it's at $600 to $800 now. I don't know. So, you know, $600 to $700, $750. I think that that is impressive, and it shows. I mean, we can speculate on why that is. People, like maybe a lot of the Evolutions product actually got opened, so there just aren't that many of those boxes anymore. People being stubborn, not willing to sell for less. Although I'm still seeing people buying them at $650, $700. So it doesn't just feel like a situation where people are slowly undercutting and the price is continuing to tank. So far, it seems like the Evolutions booster box is like holding around that price. They're being sold every single day, you know, multiple every day at around that price. And that shows stability. And it shows that, I mean, when you can buy the holos already graded for $15 to $20, right, in CGC 9, and you're not going to get higher than a CGC 9 because these cards don't grade 10s or rarely ever grade 10s. The cost of grading, particularly if it has the subgrades, is already $20, $25. So you're literally getting the card for free, and those are the hit cards from the set outside of the Charizard. The Mega Full Art Charizard is, you know, not that expensive because it's very easy to grade in a PSA 10, even though I think that should be the chase card of the set. Always kind of felt that way. Versus like the reprint Charizard. I don't understand really why people like reprint so much. But yeah. Oh, when you're asking CP6, I jumped into Evolutions. I apologize. God, I'm not thinking that well. So, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay, backtrack a little bit here. So CP6, you're picking them up for $15 to $20 in the past P2C auction. Yeah, I mean, so the downside right of CP6, you get a holo in every single pack. They grade much easier. So this kind of goes back on the other point I was making on Evolution side. The Japanese CP6 grades pretty well. I've graded a number of cards from that set. I've sold cards from that set. I have, I think, 3 or 4 more Charizards going out right now that I'm grading that I think hopefully will be 10s. It's just a lot easier to get those grades, and so the 9s are probably not going to be, you know, you're pretty much guaranteed probably a 9+, fairly guaranteed. But $15 to $20, I would much rather buy that than the CP6 booster box, you know, at whatever it is, $2,000, or, you know, if it's even higher. I know it went quite a bit higher. It's probably back around there now. You know, people in the chat can go look it up on eBay and put the prices in, or of all these things I'm mentioning. I'm probably within a decent range of being correct. Yeah, it's just when I see those humongous differences, I I think that it doesn't make any sense, and so I would only ever buy stuff that has value or makes sense to me. But people, there are sealed collectors out there. There are people who just want stuff sealed. The CP6 box is beautiful. It has the original base set art. CP6 is a much, I think the cards are much better looking than Evolutions for me. I do think that they're quite attractive, for whatever reason. Why that those are quite a bit more attractive than just the Evolutions. They still are reprints at the end of the day. There's a ton of Japanese stuff. I would rather have like a near mint 7 or 8 or even 9 Japanese holo than I would a CP6 one. And you can probably get those for $15 to $20 graded if you're patient and you're looking pretty hard. So that I guess that's sort of my answer. I still think these are definitely the most overvalued, overrated sets of the last few years. I think that this is a phenomenal example of just like herd mentality and people not thinking and sort of the blind leading the blind, in my view. And will it ever come back? This will be an interesting sort of process of, in my opinion, of people souring on the set over time, getting bored of it. Celebrations having more reprints. They're going to reprint those cards more and more and more into the future. So on the one hand, will people look back on that and be like, oh my god, it's like Evolutions and it's the second printing and it's like Evolutions is so amazing. I hear streamer after streamer telling their audiences, much bigger channels, people who will never ever, potentially, unless this channel, blows up at some point, get to this type of channel and hear what I'm saying. And then you hear people like, frankly, like SM Pratt, right, making why $1,000 booster box of Evolutions like makes sense type videos. I think Squeaks also made a video like that, whereas like a year before, there were people like, Scott and like other people, who said that if it ever got to 1,000, we'd be in like a full-blown bubble in Mania, so it just felt like this weird sort of like herd mentality that suddenly something is now expensive and now we like it. When it was cheap, no one likes it. Now that it's expensive, everyone likes it. And I would never buy into an item that got to its price point like that. So, Northwood TCG asks, I asked this on the last Q&A and it was crazy. If you were starting in today's market with roughly $2,000 starting budget, how would you go about that? So it would depend on my goals. So if I had the knowledge that I have now and my goals were to get a very, very valuable collection, my only choice would be to buy things that I thought that I could flip and make money at margin. So I would just be buying anything and everything that I felt was under market. Okay, so part of this is like when you know the prices really, really well and you're happy to do the legwork and be super engaged, I'm basically on the lookout for anything. So ideally, I'm buying a big collection for $2,000 that I can flip for $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 once I grade the good cards, right? Those do come up sometimes. That would be great. Maybe I can buy one of those and then I can sell part of it to get money immediately back so that I can continue to have that money to buy other good opportunities. When you're starting with that amount of money, you want to get ahead as quickly as possible. You do have to really take into account how long it's going to take to get your cards back if you're grading, how long something is going to sit, how liquid the item is, because you really want to churn and you want that item to be able to sell really quickly. So ideally, you want to pick I would go onto eBay and I would search like Pokemon last sold, go on to TCG Player, look at the cards and the things that are really selling and moving a lot. Now, I might avoid like ultra modern, like stuff that just got sort of, printed and is just out, because a lot of times, as we know, when more and more supply of that is probably going to come onto the market, they might also reprint those sets. You really run the risk of like, even if you buy it like 60% market right now, there could be a falling knife that really would cut you on that. But sets that are, fairly modern sets, from the Sun and Moon era, from the earlier Sword and Shield era, they're, cards, collections, buying 200, modern, full arty, GX, EX, V, combo type sets, and then flipping them and doubling your money in a week or 2 weeks of work. That type of thing is probably where I would look to. Now, the collection I want, I would really, really want to start building a vintage collection, and that I like everything, so I'm happy to have a modern collection. I really enjoy a lot of the modern cards, but the stuff that I would feel probably I need to get more quickly, and that I think I would run the risk of prices really, really getting out of control would be like very, very rare items. Your trophies, your low pop PSA 10s potentially from sort of any era in some sense. But particularly eras where, obviously they're not, more aren't being graded, or a lot more aren't being graded, because those pop reports are going to be a little bit more stable. That's where my head and my mind would be at. I think it's why it surprises people. Like, I'm always looking for value, okay? And for me, with my sort of capital, or where I'm at, I like having lower value stuff that I'm buying at good margin, and then higher value stuff, if I can and find that at good margin, I'm always looking to do that too. But understanding the whole spectrum of the market and dabbling in all elements of it is gonna increase your ability to not miss out on those amazing deals. And I get deals all the time because, I don't know, I'm just super engaged, and I feel confident, and I'm buying and bidding on items that no one else bids on. I'm bidding on lots and buying lots that I'm then tripling my money on, or these types of things that nobody's bidding on. So I think, having that firm command of those prices, going on a TCG play, or seeing what they're selling for, seeing the liquidity, and then being able to quickly break down lots and figure out the value, being able to have a good sense of condition, have a good sense of, is this buyer someone who sells gem mint possible condition cards, or do they grade all of their gem mint ones and then try and offload their sort of like modern PSA 9, PSA 8s, and then saving sellers where you tend to get a lot of those like gem mint cards because maybe they're a pack breaker and they open lots of packs, and they then because they love opening packs, and then they just sell a lot of the hits, right? Or a store, on TCG Player, when I buy stuff, I have some stores saved that they don't really grade, so they tend to just sell everything, and a lot of the stuff they have is gem mint, and I'm always looking to create a stack of that. So hopefully that is helpful. Australian Blastoise says, question, good day, Jake. Do PSA 10 1997 card as Pocket Monster cards have a lot of room for value growth in the future? Yeah, so I've heard some, I continue to hear like some negativity about a lot of these from some people, then positivity in other places for sure. It's all about demand, for a lot of this stuff. Like, supply will continue to grow on the, like the pop reports will continue to grow, but slow and steady over time. More and more will be sourced from Japan, or people will slowly grade more that they have. But these are very fragile cards. They're not very easy to get 10s in, and they're from 1997. Like, do not underestimate, just because they are not technically TCG, they are and are, well, pre sort of the English side of the hobby existing. They are early, really cool characters designs, and they are cards that were from a really important, crucial era in Pokemon, drawn by, right, official, like, TCG artists, drawn by the artists that are, so don't underestimate, and this is why I bought a number of them, and now I was one of the people who was shouting at the top of my lungs that all this stuff was super overvalued, and I love this stuff, and I think it's great, but, like, it's amazing. Like, this stuff shot up a lot more than WotC, some of it. It's tough. And the reason it shot up so much is because they're great looking, because they're pre-WotC, and because they're much lower pop 10s, right? There were only 10, 15 of some of the 10s, versus anything in like base set first edition or jungle or fossil or the gyms or rocket, in particular. Neo has some that are that low. E-Series has some that are that low, but there are just way, way less of them. So, and there isn't like that nearly as much, in my opinion, there isn't nearly as much of that sealed product left as there is first edition WotC, outside of maybe base set first edition. Of course, there are some of those boxes left, but they're when we talk about Thompson in particular here, They're pretty low grade out of them, and you're certainly not guaranteed tens. There's a lot of centering issues. They're extremely fragile cards, and the Prism cards are very difficult to pull. It's like for like 1 in 40 or something. I've heard different numbers thrown out, but for Top Zone, but at the end of the day, guys, you have to collect what you like. You have to don't listen to the herd. The herd is stupid, right? The herd, particularly when the herd does not have reasons. You can see that I have my convictions. I stick with my convictions, and I've been very successful with my convictions. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always right on things and am always going to be right. But I think when you are educated and you have reasons for why you value things, you yourself freaking love Pokemon. I am the consumer of this stuff. I think I understand this stuff extremely well. I understand the nostalgia very well and the connection to it very well. I think I'm able to be a fairly good, barometer. And of course, I'm gonna, as I said before, I'm gonna get things wrong. But overall, when I'm also trying to always buy so much under market, and I'm both patient and then very aggressive when I find good deals, it's just it's a successful formula that I would really, if you start using that sort of formula, you will be successful too, very, very likely. Story of Brian says, do you think Harry Potter will get a little bump with CGC now grading them? Could be. There is quite a bit of those booster boxes. They really need to be opened up. Like more people need to start liking it, enjoying it, collecting it. Some of those booster boxes are still 10 times the value that I paid, right? Just a year and a half ago. Well, only one of them actually is still 10 times. The rest are not. And that one has held, even though for those of us kind of more in the know on Harry Potter, we know that one's actually probably printed the most, and there's a ton of those. But people are very slowly trickling them onto the market. There's still... you really need to develop, I think, a TCG Harry Potter modern game, and people really getting into like modern Harry Potter and getting more Harry Potter fans into cards in general could over time bring more value to that. More eyes, more interest. I love it. I think it's super cool. I think the booster boxes look awesome as display pieces. To get sort of vintage Harry Potter, Wizards of the Coast from the same era, the same type of look as Pokemon, even though it is not $250, $300 for some of those booster boxes, it doesn't seem crazy at all to me. Even though they're just not that popular. Because people don't have the nostalgia. They don't have, for those cards specifically, even if they have nostalgia for Harry Potter in the books. I think if people start seeing graded cards on PWCC of Harry Potter, it could cause more people to become aware of it and then look at them. And if those start getting high prices, then you're going to start seeing people opening booster boxes and trying to grade the cards and trying to get involved in that. And that will certainly raise the prices of the booster boxes, 100% if that happens. So... A lot of some potential. I don't really know what will happen. Let's see. Shop TCG says, what do you think about the banned Presto postcards from the 98-99 era? I don't even know what they are. Maybe I would, if I saw a picture of them, I would recognize them, but I don't know that name. Sorry. There's so many. There's endless Pokemon stuff. Aiden M says, do you think the non-TCG Dragon Ball cards, such as the Cardas and Bandai collections, do you enjoy? I do. I think the Bandai stuff's really sweet. Yeah, Bandai and Cardas stuff is really cool. We've got some people in the Patreon and in the Discord who are big into those and taught us a little more about them, and I've tried to learn more. It's very confusing. Some of the websites are very confusing about, there's so many different sets. For those who don't know, these are cards that basically look a lot like the 1997 Monster Card Essence and the Prism cards, even more so from the Top Zone, the 1995, and then the 1996 versus Top Zone sets. For those who know Pokemon lingo, they have the similar sort of prism hollow pattern. Really cool looking cards. Charvy says, do you know any private sales history of Slow King Neo Hollow First Edition PSA 10 or even Unlimited 10? Do I know? I probably did, and I probably have something written down somewhere in some notes, but off the top of my head, I don't remember exact amounts. So I'm not going to throw out numbers out there, but you can ask me later in the Patreon or the Discord, and maybe I can look at my notes to see if I have any info. Thrifty TCG says, how many people got in the PSA raffle? Even $50 a card seems like highway robbery. It depends on the card. I think some people do have cards that they really want to move, that they really want to get out of, and get that money and then put it into something else. But the majority of my cards, I'm certainly not sending in at $50. But I'm also not someone who tries to turn things over a lot. I turn things over a little bit, but not a huge amount. So. Adrian Salas says, how well do you see alternative art cards doing in the future? It's tough. It's tough with those. I think that they have been some of the most overvalued cards in the hobby, since the start of them, including that the heart Latios card, which to me got insanely overvalued, just to be completely honest. I'm sorry to those who own it or who did own it. It's a bad time to buy them because they're the cards that everyone is saying are the best looking and the most attractive and this or that. And although when I look at them, I think that they're really cool looking and attractive, and I get it, and I do want them eventually, particularly the Celebi I've always talked about. It's my favorite one, hands down, in terms of just the art itself. I think that card is gorgeous. And then, the Umbreon's beautiful. Honestly, there's so many that are really good looking. They did a really good job on the arts, but again, I think they did a really good job on the Shiny Vault, and everything has a different appeal. The Shiny Vault is really nice because it's all shiny. It has some of my favorite Pokemon in it, and they all look the same, and that can actually be enjoyable as a collector. So there's value and enjoyment and fun and a humongous amount of them to chase. Now, with the alternative arts, what's kind of cool is that they're all different, and they're very creative, and they have really kind of unique, cool arts and scenes. I really like that, too. Pokemon is going to come up with more cool stuff in the next generation and going forward. And those cards, nobody knows how they're going to age in terms of popularity, in terms of enjoyment. And likely, they will experience a period where people aren't that interested in them. When that happens, that would be the time that I'd be looking to pick them up and buy them. But again, it's very different, right? Most people, they like to be part of the hype. They like to be buying when everyone is excited about something because they want to open it and enjoy it with people. That is 100% fine. Those people are not stupid. There's nothing stupid about having fun and enjoying the hobby exactly how you want to enjoy it. What is wrong, though, is when those people are telling them that those are good investments, or that now is a really good time to buy those, or, that, and particularly when it's businesses or when it's pack breakers telling them, who are actually selling them directly the product and are basically benefiting off of their own advice that they're giving, right? This sort of sleazy stuff that we saw all year. So I would wait for that period. Now, is it possible that period won't come? And is it possible that alternative arts from this period just go down as the best cards of the next 20 years? Anything is possible. I can't predict things like that. I just know that I can tell you Hidden Fates right now are selling for lower than when Hidden Fates was first coming out, and everyone was saying that about Hidden Fates. So, best set ever. This will be down the best set of all time. We're going to buy it up. We're going to, it's going to go to the moon. It's only ever going to go up. You should just buy it all, buy. And I agree that it's a phenomenal set, and I agree that these alternative arts are great. And so this is where I think there's some miscommunication. It's all about price point. Now, when I have actual negative opinions about things, I will share them. When I don't think cards are good or ugly or or whatever, I do not feel that way about really anything modern. I think modern's been great. I think they've done a really good job. I think even a lot of these sets have nice, really, really nice commons and uncommons in them. Really beautiful designs that they really seem to put effort into. And it's fun to open these sets. I think they're doing a great job. But again, it's move away from the herd. The herd, and this is just human nature. When a lot of people like something, you like it more. And I really try to express this in the trophy card market. There's a humongous issue with this. There's a lot of trophy cards that are way, way overpriced and a lot of trophy cards that are way underpriced relative to each other. And I will continue to say this. It is herd mentality in the trophy market. It's an expert or someone who people look to says an opinion, or some of the loudest, most confident people say opinions and then they dislike all the comments that say a different opinion, and it's sort of like herds to that opinion when the actual fundamentals tell a completely different story, when the rarity tells a completely different story, when the Pokemon tells a different story because there's more popular Pokemon on this cheaper one, when the original art tells a different story, when the historic importance of the card in terms of it being connected to the biggest tournament, So again, I feel very, very confident about this stuff, and I've seen it time and time again in markets in my life. You see it time again in crypto. You'll see it in stocks like Tesla and like whatever's the biggest rage, the biggest thing. It's a humongous herd mentality. Now, when there's a big herd mentality, that doesn't mean the underlying thing isn't valuable or isn't a great company like Tesla, or crypto is useless or something like that. It just means that right now these things are can get extraordinarily overvalued, at least in the short term, because tons and tons of people who have no business owning it, who have no knowledge or understanding of the company, of the crypto, of the Pokemon card, of whatever, are buying it because people that they trust, or the biggest influencers or the richest people or whatever, own it. And that is what creates bubbles. And that's what happened in Pokemon this year, broadly across everything in Pokemon, really. But certain things got hit way worse. Other things right now, like a lot of the Worlds promos and some other things, which I wish I had never talked about, I continue to say it, I'm continuing to buy them, right? Like some of the stuff that is truly rare and was never valued that much for whatever reason, like that stuff, some of that stuff's at all-time highs right now and is selling easily, right? People can sell it easily. So it's over time, this stuff will become even clearer, and I am very confident on that, as long as the market sustains itself, because people, the more time you spend in a hobby, the more expertise you develop inside, the more agency you have inside to then resist sort of the herd mentality. And when, and that herd mentality will always be there to a certain extent, but it won't be as strong. And the herd mentality, by the way, guys, goes into all the gatekeeping that's happened this year. A lot of the gatekeeping comes from the irrational herd mentality of like, this is the way to collect, this is the way to invest, this is the way to think, right? Modern's just garbage, and anyone who likes modern is stupid. Vintage is just for pricks and for like rich people who are out of touch and don't understand value. Trophy cards are stupid. They're like, why would you want a card that someone played? Binder cards are stupid. I want graded cards. Graded cards are stupid. Like there's a bunch of just like, it's absolutely fine to have like your own opinion, but like understand how like irrational, like all of those takes are fine, but none of them describe any large portion of the market. There's a ton of people who feel very differently than you. And I even think some of the people, when they say those things, are just kind of repeating talking points or things that they hear other people say and are not things they actually feel themselves. So if there's anything that I have taught you guys on this channel for the last year and a half, I hope that it is think for yourself, think critically, be thoughtful, and collect what you love. Invest in what you understand, whether that's Pokemon, stocks, anything in life, and collect what you love. It's like the golden rule. Okay? Metal Head said, if I sold all my modern doubles at bulk prices to buy singles, did I long-term lose out on all the value of that volume of cards? If I sold all my modern doubles at bulk prices to buy singles, I don't know which bulk cards. Is it possible that like regular hollows today and regular reverse hollows in these sets today, that you are selling for bulk prices will like eventually go to like $1, $2, $4, $5 a card? It's possible. I don't know how likely. That's going to take a humongously more popular hobby. There's going to need to be a lot more money and a lot more people in it, which is possible in the future. And we're going to have to see a lot of attrition, which is people like not caring about those cards. But so many people, I think, are just opening lots of stuff and are keeping that stuff just like in a shoebox. And like, yeah, it might bounce around and and some of it might get damaged, but a lot of it is not, like, it's never going to be as nearly as rare, in my opinion, both because of the amount of it that's printed, and I think the fact that there are going to be a number of people who do keep it fairly in good condition and don't play with it and all these types of things. And the amount of supply that I think won't get opened is going to be a lot more than some of the vintage stuff. It just will never, it'll never match that. And even if we look today, like the black and white era, where you can still go out and you can buy like regular holos and big lots for like $1, $2, $3 a piece, like that era was so much less printed, and that era is experiencing that sort of thing, 5-6 years later. How long is that going to take for something where there's like 10 times the amount printed maybe, and 10 times the amount of collectors keeping it in good condition, right? To reach those types of prices. I'm just not sure it'll get there. It might get there though. I would never be one to say that it couldn't get there, or that 20 years from now or something like that, 10, 15, 20 years from now, those cards aren't going for a few bucks each. Again, you're not going to get rich off of that probably unless you hoard a massive amount. And then even then, I'm not sure what the demand, like how liquid or how easy those would be to sell. So, Coyote Bacon says, what are your very brief thoughts on what would happen in the market if 1, PSA stopped grading cards, or 2, Pokemon stopped printing cards? Gosh, brief thoughts on very complex topics. I'm not really sure. For the sake of that, there are so many questions. I'm going to try to rapid fire and get through things a little faster. But I guess what I would say. Okay, PSA stops grading cards. I don't think it would be good for our older PSA stuff. I think a lot of people, I think we're still pretty new in the hobby. I think that it would give a lot of room for some of these other grading card companies to really even take over the vintage markets at times, and more young collectors becoming in the hobby, not grading with PSA, not getting experience with them, and then moving to CGC or Beckett or something else, and then eventually wanting, all of your collection to be uniform, or you want some comfort with all that. So it wouldn't be good. As far as like Pokemon stop printing cards, I don't know. I don't know what would happen. I definitely think it would be much harder to get new people interested and engaged. Would some of these older cards, or the cards that are already out, maintain value or be able to go up over time? In some sense, it would create less competition because there wouldn't be new sets, and so this would be it. This would be all the Pokemon cards in existence, theoretically, or whatever, unless they started doing it again, which would create a limit. But you also wouldn't be getting new generations into it, and more people engaged and constantly coming in. So I think overall it would be a negative. But I'm not sure it would, I've heard people say like it might destroy the hobby, or that these things would become completely, not valuable. I'm not sure that's the case, although could be. Yeah, Mason said, Jake thinks arts are meh in response, and then Stephen Lee says it perfectly. Lies, Mason. He loves alt arts if the price is right. Exactly. I definitely will be completing all of the alt arts eventually, and if they don't come down in price, and if they just go up in price, and I see them stable at that price for a long time, I will just buy them at the higher price eventually. So, because I think that they're really cool and really like them. But Bryce Miller says, "Hi Jake, do you think buying e-reader and EX Reverse Holo PSA 9s is a fairly safe long-term play, or are these cards I need to buy in PSA 10 due to lack of popularity?" I really can't predict the future. Again, I think if Pokemon does well in the long term, if you're buying these cards at or slightly under market, whether it's PSA 9 or PSA 10, they will go up in value over time. it's going to depend on the price point and the population report and which Pokemon, whether I would advise you to buy the 10 or the 9. Often I think the 9 is a better value than the 10 and will do better over time or hold value better over time or is less risky or these types of things. So it really would depend on the card, as with most things. Mason says Jake will buy anything if the price is right. That is not true. I mean, if the price is right in terms of, I won't buy. There are things that I knew that I could make money on that I did not buy because I didn't believe in it. So I guess in that sense, like for example, on my channel, you can go back before all of the modern booster boxes went up in price, and I said it's very likely that all the modern booster boxes are about to go up in price. We've started to see it a little bit with some of like some of the later Sun and Moon ones. It only makes sense that Burning Shadows and some of these other booster boxes are going to go up in price too. Z and G, James and I had conversation about it. I think James actually came out with a modern video basically saying that these 5 things were the best things to invest in, and just said has 250,000 views or something. It's his best. It's so ridiculous that it's his best. After all the work and knowledge that he has, the video that did the best was just throwing out the 5 most obvious sets that any person in the hobby could have done at that time, who was even like spent like a month or 2 in the hobby. But that just shows you what does, the masses, what information the masses want, and what blah blah blah. But it's just funny. But yeah, so there, like, that was an example of where I thought that was going to happen, but I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a part of it. It felt very speculative. It felt like a lot of the people who were buying those things were not people who were going to hold them long term, and I just didn't want to take part in it and take place in it. And so instead, I bought Harry Potter, Marvel, and Score DBZ. And Score DBZ did about the same as those modern Pokemon, a lot of those things. Marvel and Harry Potter did much, much better than I would have done if I had bought those boxes. So it ended up being okay. There's always lots of good opportunity, and you have only so much money. But that's an example of where I did think that I didn't necessarily think that Harry Potter was going to do better. In fact, I thought that I definitely thought the Harry Potter was more undervalued as from a collector, and so I guess in that sense, part of me would have predicted it to do better because it just felt so undervalued when we think about the age of those boxes, the coolness of the look, and the fact that like the Pokemon box is going for $30,000 and the basic Harry Potter box is going for $75 or $100. It's kind of wild, or $150 maybe by the end of when I was buying. But there's just a lot of risk in that, and where's that demand come from? And it just seemed like much more of a sure thing that those modern booster boxes would triple because some of them already had. And, and so many people in the Pokemon market saw this and started to buy onto it. And it was kind of like the hype train that one went up and then the next one went up and then, eventually Crimson Invasion and, and Steam Siege went up, that type of thing. And yeah, I guess I don't want to own those items. I don't care about them. I don't value them at that high amount, and there are other places to make money or something like that. I don't know. I might not be being completely logical, but we're not always, we're emotional, and I didn't want to make my money in those. I don't believe in it. I don't want to be part of that hype. So I always try to buy things that I think should be more valuable than they actually are, rather than momentum investing into something that I don't see the value in, even if I think the market is going to push it up. I guess that's where the logic is, or the best way to explain it. So it's not all about making money. Lucky K says, Thrifty TCG, I got in and was able to submit the 5 cards. Oh, talking about the thing today. Ray Q says, oh, geez, just jump to the bottom. Oh, man, there's so many questions. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, gotta hurry up here. Trying to find where we were. Oh, this is a great question, right? Jake, how do you view quick flips in Pokemon compared to long-term holds? Which do you prefer? Okay. This is something I'm still really trying to figure out. I wanted to ask Rusty about this, because Rusty's just been in the game a long time, and he puts stuff back and holds it and invests. And I also want to ask Rudy. I would love to get Rudy on this channel, guys. I've asked him, and and been in contact with him, and I'm hoping one day he will reconsider. I know he's watched this channel and engaged in the chat before. These are the types of questions I want to ask people who are more knowledgeable than me in terms of what they have done successfully long term. I am much more of a hold investor type. I prefer to buy things and hold them for the long term, in large part because I'm very busy. I have a full-time job, and I don't like sitting there and flipping and selling lots of cards all day. And so I limit the amount that I do that in my business, and I look for more buying things that I can hold for 5-10 years and I think will go up a lot, or just things that I really want for my collection that I think will cost me more to buy in the future. But I think it's such a great question, particularly, for someone also like Mason, or, is here in the chat, or, any business. Every business has a different model, or Scott Pratt, great question to ask Scott too. Every business has a different model. I know Scott has said things like he puts a booster box away, from every Japanese set or something like that, or, he obviously fairly rarely, and he does sell trophies, but I think he also amasses a lot of them, or did for many years before selling some. I don't really know. His strategy in terms of how many do I buy, trip 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, wait for the price to go up to a certain point, and then I sell there. So I've heard lots of different strategies. One is waiting for a specific price point. So it's like, I'm going to hold this until I double my money or triple my money, and then I'm going to sell it no matter what's going on. That's one way to do it, however long it takes. Another thing to do is to hold it for a certain amount of time and then sell it wherever the market is at. The way I do it is not so black and white and so formulaic. It's a lot more just sort of instinctual and based on my rationality at the time. If I think something is overvalued and I don't think it's going to grow for a long time, like the unlimited base set, I had a humongous position in unlimited, base set hollows and PSA 9s and 10s and stuff, and I sold the vast majority of that because I was very concerned that it would never get back to those price points, or it would take many years to get back to those price points. That was an example where I was like, I will absolutely sell that. Whereas I had other cards that I thought were going to go down in price quite a bit, but I thought would recover quicker. And I didn't know how to time the market. I didn't know how long I should hold it. I didn't know when the bubble was going to burst. It wouldn't surprise me, guys, if things hadn't burst over the last 6 months. Like if this had lasted longer, that wouldn't have shocked me. Like obviously I was right, or I seem very right, in terms of what I was saying all last year. But I never said it was going to happen. This is when it's going to happen, this month, or this week, or whatever. The only argument that I ever had was there were a bunch of people saying that you're gonna continue to double month after month based on absolutely nothing. They were just making shit up. Excuse me, I swore. Apologies. Similarly to the people that would be very similar to me coming out as a bearish person and predicting like next month it's going to have, or this or that. You can't time these things. You can only see, kind of have a rough estimate or feeling of like, I made a bunch of videos on this about the stages of a bubble. I suggest people go back and watch them, if they haven't, to understand like which stage of the bubble we were in, to try to get a better, understanding of are we still in sort of the hype up mania phase? Are we in the full blown mania phase? Are we starting to come down? Where are we in that sort of arc? And so I really can't, that's where it becomes very difficult. So, and where in this case, I used like price points, like as soon as the card, and I happened to get lucky and I sold at the height. That was luck. The fact that I held just long enough to actually sell at the exact right time was luck, because I really wanted to sell. Like I had a lot of feelings about selling like a few months earlier, and I just happened to hold a lot of it for like an extra couple months. And because I held it an extra couple months, I made it doubled up in the amount that I made. I would have made half as much if I had, and I still would have made a humongous amount, and I still would have sold, my Charizards at like 3,000 instead of like 6,000 that I was able to sell them at. And that was complete luck. Now, what did I base that off of? I don't know how I mean, I guess when you're so engaged like me and you're checking prices every single day, you get a sense for the trends, you get a sense for it and a feeling for it. But at the end of the day, even when you do that, there's still a ton of guesswork involved. And as I said before, it would not have shocked me if prices had doubled again after I sold it. Um, because it just was unclear how much more money would flood in. Now, when I would sit down and when I would think about how much money is it going to take for it to double again, this is, I guess, where I really got my confidence to sell. I just didn't know where the money could keep coming from. We had big businesses coming in, buying up cards. We had companies like Rally continuing to push the market up, these like fractional share things. We get big sports guys come in and buy up a bunch of cards. But there are not that many people who really love this stuff and care about this stuff who have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year to spend on these things. And when you think about it that way, it's amazing how much it was able to rise. And that's, I guess I do a lot of the math. A lot of it's instinct, but a lot of it is also being just constantly absorbing data. And one thing my dad has always taught me is that there are certain people who always tend to have the opposite instinct, and you can actually sometimes you can use these people as like a barometer for getting it wrong. And when they start to buy, that's like the exact time you should sell. And you kind of get further down the line of like the people who are like very like they're skeptical, they don't really like Pokemon. If those people start to buy, that's when you know that like, oh my god, the people who are buying Pokemon don't even care about it that much and just want to make money. And the people selling are people who've been here for 15 years who hate to sell their cards, who freaking love their cards, who never want to sell anything. Like when all of my friends, my like high-end collector friends, started selling their entire collections that they never expected to sell, or they didn't expect to sell till retirement, and the people buying it, no offense, but like were people like Shine, right, who were like from the sports card community who didn't even know what a Pokemon was and was just looking to like invest, right? That was a sign for me of like a humongous bubble, and that there isn't and Sasha T, people like that, right? And Card Kahuna selling his Charizard, like those types of moments. Like when those people are doing that type of stuff, that is a big sign that you are in a full-blown mania and you're sort of at the top. And I could only know that by having deep knowledge in the hobby and knowing who was doing the buying and who was doing the selling. Hopefully that makes sense. So to go back to your question, Ray, I would try to apply all of that to my decision making. I do think one thing that can be good, though, is taking out, particularly if you are not very wealthy and you don't have a huge income, is constantly taking out what you put in. So when something goes up, at least taking out some of it so that you recoup sort of your initial cost and then maybe putting that in something else and growing that way. A lot of surviving in this hobby and making money in the long run in investing or doing anything actually has to do with mental health. And it's not just about like mathematically this was like the best thing you could do. It's about how do you sustain a system for yourself that doesn't drive you crazy and doesn't make you anxious and allows you to make good decisions over time. You don't have to make the best possible decision, just good solid decisions over time, over the long period of time, and you'll do very well. I think someone who's been really good is someone like the Flex Gods. He's someone who I think has a real knack for like doing like I think he really learned this year and really figured out how the system works and is not trying to necessarily like hit home runs. He's just like making smart decision after smart decision and is willing to sell, is willing to let go of things, doesn't get too attached to things, understands that he can get it back. Like the vibe that I get from him, particularly as the year went on in some of the videos I watched, I was like, that's the type of like not trying to hit home runs, but really understanding how to do this, not over-promising, guaranteeing. Someone who I could see being very successful and has kind of the right attitude. Someone like Dan, Catch 'em All Collectible, really good attitude. Nick, like these people have just a smart, calm, sort of business savvy over time. Not necessarily trying to hit a home run, with every possible deal. We always want to hit home runs and look for those, but a lot of the times that's just not possible. Oh, okay. What do you think of the base set 2? I'm just collecting, not for resale, and they're way cheaper to buy. I think base set 2 is probably fairly appropriately priced. It's better than Evolutions. But I don't know. It's I have mixed feelings about base set 2 because I think if Legendary Collection didn't exist, I would like base set 2 better because it has a lot of the, it combines a lot of Pokemon from the first few sets. But I just really I always really like Legendary Collection. So Legendary Collection is like a humongous fad right now, and people loved it, and prices ridiculously soared on that. When I was collecting Legendary Collection and trying to complete the set in PSA 9, PSA 10, it was not very popular. And the only reason it was expensive was because there wasn't a lot of it. And everyone talked about how there wasn't a lot of it, but it wasn't the thing that everyone was chasing. It was actually kind of talked down on a little bit. Another example of following herd mentality and, trusting your own gut, going after what you like, not listening to, there are some big people in the hobby who would make videos talking about how, and put that in sort of they're overrated. And that was when the PSA 9 cards were $15 a card for your average one. And so I really liked it because it had all of the WotC sets together in one sort of super cool mega set, and then the reverse holos are just freaking awesome. And I think the little Legendary Collection symbol is much less annoying than the base set 2. I don't like the 2 on the cards aesthetically, whereas the little Legendary Collection symbol doesn't bother me that much. And the fact that it has all of the cards, so many cool, all my favorite arts, and you can get them all in that reverse holo pattern. Just as a collector, I got it. I really understood why I really liked that and why I thought it was really cool. Base set 2 kind of falls in sort of a not as good as any of those other options. But because you can pick it up for cheaper, I don't think it's overvalued. I think it's probably appropriately, relatively appropriately valued. Now, I will say that because there's no first edition of base set 2, for completionists, they need to get all of those cards in PSA 10. So there was a period where I actually went after the PSA 10s from base set 2 because they were low pop, and I knew there'd be completionists trying to complete every WotC set who would pay a lot of money for that. Outside of that sort of very specific rationality I had and thinking that I had on that set, I just don't see the huge upside. Alan Gossoff said, "What's your thoughts on Expedition base set?" Love Expedition. I love Expedition. I love Aquapolis. I love Skyridge. It's just a great era. Beautiful art. Big fan of all those sets. They've done really well, and they've maintained their value really well during this period. Sam DT75. Hopefully nobody submitted cards to be graded through Mark's Cards. I've never heard of it. Oh my gosh, some of the grading card companies I have seen. I've even seen some breakers start their own grading card companies that they're doing on stream and these types of things. And it's on the one hand, I guess it's it's cool that people are starting businesses, but you're probably scamming people with that. You're probably ripping people off because it's very unlikely that those will ever have value. And so particularly when they're selling them to their viewers, these are really good, this is worth it, and this makes your card more valuable. It's to anyone, at least today, now things could change. I think it's very, very difficult, but they look at that and they think it's a joke and would much rather have the card, because if I ever get that case, I'm going to have to break that case open because who are you? You have no experience authenticating, and it's ridiculous. Of course, we've looked at, with this whole Logan Paul thing, it's very questionable who's grading things, right? All around, but that's a whole nother debate. But yeah, be careful that stuff. It's crazy. I'm shocked that people are buying these things and think that they're gonna make money off of it or that it's a good investment. Kid Cherry, hi Jake. Question: how will you handle selling in 2022 with $600 threshold for 1099K? It's not going to affect me. I'm a business already, so and tax stuff I don't really talk too much in detail on this channel. I have a tax professional. My advice to everyone: seek a tax professional, in your state who knows the laws, who can help you with this stuff. Pay taxes, please. Alan Gasol says the Expedition. He has a lot of Expedition. PSA 10 hollows. That's awesome. Pop art hasn't moved up much. Exactly. Yeah. Killian says, what is your view on Japanese vending series? Exclusive Japanese artwork at reasonable price, but print run seems large. Yeah. I don't know how large. There doesn't seem to be quite as much for sale as there was at one point. I have a couple completed sets and about a third of it graded. I want to complete it graded one day, but like everything else, it kind of went up in price, and that was something that I just sort of had on the back burner. Phenomenal art, really cool cards. I'm a big fan of the vending series. I have no idea how much. I have zero idea of how much exists of that. Like literally zero idea. For many years, I saw it around. You could pick up sheets of it for really cheap on eBay. There's always seemed to be more of it on Buyee, Yahoo Japan. No idea. I can tell you that I see much less, and it goes for so much more. The like sealed top soon, particularly like the blue back, but even the green back set or these types of things, like the scarcity, the rarity, and then scarcity of that product, and then the price that it sells for when it comes up on market is so much more than those vending series have ever gotten. Even though some of the vending series, the cards themselves actually go for, in some cases, fairly similar to some of the top soon cards, although the top soon certainly more valuable. Again, the vending series are actually Pokemon TCG. Some people care about that, some people don't. The original kind of unique art versus this sort of like very basic. I like the top soon basic stuff because for me it's all part of the enjoyment of the hobby. I like everything. It's just the like I like almost everything. For me, all things sort of have their place. Those have their place as sort of like very early sort of concept, and then the Monster Card S997 has a place because it's like more whimsical, fun. They're fighting. They're in all sorts of interesting different poses. I love the vending series, the cool hand-drawn-y style art on those, phenomenal. A lot of that art, of course, you can also get in the different like starter decks and things, from that era. So there are some other ways to get some of those arts, but yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on it. I really don't know how much is there, but buy slowly. Try to get them under market. Try to get it in volume. They're really cool, but I wouldn't. I'm not sure there's almost nothing that I think is like crazy undervalued, and then I think is gonna all of a sudden stonk at this point. Boo Sutherland says, what do you think about PSA 10 Legendary Collection versus? I love them. I have a lot of them. Those have really gone up a lot. They're hugely popular now. A lot of people really like them. Do I think they're going to retain their value? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. They're tough. They're tough just because of how much they've gone up. But people freaking love those cards, and there aren't that many of them. And those boxes are like, there are not very many of those boxes. And to pull each one is very difficult because it's a humongous set. I don't have the exact number on the top of my head, and it's going to be like 1 in 140 or however many in that set to pull each individual one. So that's a lot of packs you have to open to, on average, pull each individual one. So I get it. And then it's hard to grade. Print line issues, widening, all sorts of issues on those cards. So it's not easy to get 10s even fresh out of pack. That's what I would say. So again, I think that they're really, really undervalued now, probably more closely valued to where they should be, but maybe a little overvalued. I think that for me, I love first appearance cards, and when I can get sort of low pop first appearance cards at even less than the reverse holo, I lean towards those regular holo, and I have both, so I'm not biased one way or another from a price perspective. But I can see arguments for both sides. Zaka says, thoughts on Amazing Rares going for $1 in near mint? I like the Amazing Rares. I prefer the Baby Shinies. But I think that Amazing Rares, it's not a terrible time, although I do think that there's a lot more Vivid Voltage and then, Shining Fates and stuff out there than there, and left to be open and left to flood the market. Now, I think Hidden Fates is going to be flooded on the market for a while. There are, thousands of Baby Shinies on TCG Player right now. Thousands and thousands. Now, there are tons of Baby Shinies, they're not easy to pull. To pull each individual Shining Fates Baby Shiny is very difficult. Whereas the Amazing Rares, even though I think they were 1 in 19 to pull from that set, versus the 1 in 4 or whatever it is for the Baby Shiny, I think those numbers are right, or they're very close to right. Because of the amount of Baby Shiny, it's actually much harder to pull each individual Baby Shiny versus the Amazing Rare. Hopefully that makes sense for people. So there's just a lot of that. I also just don't think they hold up as well as a Shiny Vault will over the long run. I think they're beautiful cards. I think that they will be a cool subset that people want to collect, as long as Pokemon does well, people will want those in PSA 9, PSA 10. They're great looking. It's just going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time for Hidden Fates too. These are not quick things. It's going to take a while for all that supply to be eaten up, unless huge whales come in and just grab them all, which I don't think would be the dumbest thing in the world, to be completely honest. But, we'll see. There's so many right now. It's going to take a long time. Australian Blaster says, question, do you know much about the amount of the Japanese Burn Tower reviving Legends prize cards in circulation? I've been asked this before, Botan and I have. We don't know. Perhaps next time Nate is on here, we can get his sort of opinion of how many he feels he's seen around. Nate is, not only is Nate has had a lot of experience with these types of cards. He's been buying and selling and has seen many of them, and isn't afraid to throw out numbers. He's a little less afraid than me to throw out guesstimates and numbers. So I'm just not sure. Really cool looking cards. Not sure how rare. Sorry. Patrick Cyrus says, Jake, I saw Alan Grown Pokemon asking questions in your chat during the last live with Mason Pokemon Classics. He's a pretty prominent Twitch breaker. Yeah, I've heard of him, but I've heard, would you ever have him on a live? Potentially. If people would like that. I don't know him at all. I know I saw him on, I watched a little bit of Mizkif during, the real boom, and I know he had him on there for some of his videos, and that's how I saw him. If you guys think it would be an interesting conversation and he would be interested in, I'm always happy to talk to people, big and small. For me, it's mainly people who are passionate and interested and have, just interesting things to say, that we would have an interesting discussion. And people that I like and respect. But it seems like a good dude. Unless someone's told me otherwise. I mean, he seemed like a nice guy who really enjoys the hobby, and people are allowed to also people who, in my opinion, are falling for the hype or fell for the hype this year, or kind of like falling for that herd mentality. It doesn't mean that they're like a manipulator, or that they are aware of it, or that they're intentionally doing anything wrong. They may really believe what they believe, just like I believe what I believe. You guys can decide. Everyone out there can decide what they think and how they take. I think a lot of times when we disagree with someone, we assume that they have some sort of like negative, intentions, like they're intentionally deceiving us, versus they just have a different take on things. They have a different viewpoint and belief system. And I think that's a mistake we make. Now, do I think that some people, are intentionally saying things that they don't believe because they know it will benefit their business? 100%, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that Rattle interview with that guy. Oh my God, that guy, just has no problem scamming people, right? There are a number of people like that in this Pokemon world, and scamming is not just steal product. It's also being a booster box breaker and hyping up your cards and overselling and lying to your audience about prices and doing like some, fake repacks and scam. There's so much, there are people who do that crap, right? And those people are different than just people who you disagree with, and you have passionate opinions, they have passionate opinions, I don't think, and I've never seen someone like Island Grown, even if, frankly, if he had different opinions than me, I'd love to have him on. If he saw things differently, we could have an interesting discussion about it. Question: how do you think that CGC 9.5s compare to BGS 9.5s compared to the PSA 10s? I signed to CGC 9.5 base at Charizard for 2K, and I'm feeling strong opportunity with CGC 9.5s in general. Yeah, I mean, the Unlimited's selling for like $1,500, $1,600 in a 9 right now, in a PSA 9. So buying a 9.5 CGC, CGC 9.5 for 2K. My question would be, does it have subgrades? And how strong are the subgrades, right? If I have like a 9.5 and it has like a 9 and 3 9.5s, and I look at it and there's some pretty significant, there's a significant sort of obvious nick or something, or it has a 9 on centering and I can really see that it's off, like that isn't going to get a PSA 10 very, very likely. And so really you just paid for like a maybe decently strong 9, you paid, $500 over. That's sort of the reality. Now, will people pay the premium, and should there be a slight premium on 9.5s that probably aren't going to get 10s but are strong 9s? Sure, and the market will decide these things. Now, if you think it's a really, I've bought CGC cards that I think are 10s that look perfect to me. CGC 9.5s that I think are 10s. CGC just doesn't give out 10s really, so there are 9.5s that are like real strong, solid PSA 10s in my opinion. Like even strong 10s will get 9.5s. Definite opportunity in those. Like, I personally would be picking those up all day if you can get that at a similar price as this. So, and this might be an example where you did get a really strong one, Paul. Stuart says, do you by any chance share your eBay profile? No worries if you don't, just wondering. So I have a few different ones. I have like private personal ones, and then I have ones that I use like for business that I like, don't pay sales tax because I'm a reseller on, these types of things. I don't actively share, but like there are people on my Patreon or my Discord where I will like share things that I bought sometimes, and it will like link to my eBay, and someone can figure out, okay, this is, I think someone looked and saw how many items I bid on recently and said it, but I don't use this platform or my name, and none of my stuff or my selling has like Pokenomics on it or anything, because I don't want to use this brand and this, like, this Pokenomics. First of all, I am not Pokenomics, and I never wanted to be, but the whole Pokenomics thing and, community or conversation is just meant to be like a place where just, diehard collectors can talk and share and I wanted to be an educational space, and I didn't want to have that conflict with sort of a business or using this to like sell directly to my audience or any sort of thing like that. So I sort of intentionally wanted to separate them as much as I possibly could, if that makes sense. A lot of, and there's nothing wrong with this necessarily. There can be stuff that I think is difficult to navigate. When you are giving people financial advice and you are also directly selling things sort of like under your name, like, but again, and Squeaks and I have talked about this, like that can be better because, for example, like if people can't track what I'm selling or what I'm doing, I could be on here saying this thing over here is a great buy. Meanwhile, I'm directly selling that on my eBay platform and no one can call me out for it because you guys don't know what it is. Now, I swear that I don't do that. I would never do that. I talk constantly against my own interest on this channel. I swear that that's the truth, but again, it's the plus, I guess the one plus, and Squeaks and I would talk about this, and of him being so public is that people can like, they don't have to take his word for it. They can like check to see what he's actually doing, what he's actually buying, what he's actually selling, and I do understand that, but there's pluses and minuses. I also just don't want people like, I'm kind of private. I don't want people mirroring or doing what I'm doing. I don't know. It's, all that stuff's uncomfortable for me. Jordan McCormick, what do you think of vintage base mint condition cards? Do you think there is still room for them to grow in the future? There's room for everything to grow. We're very early in the hobby, and there's a lot of potential for growth in everything. So, do I think that it's gonna that specifically is gonna be the best grower in the whole hobby? I don't really know. I couldn't say. But nothing's guaranteed. And as I said in my last video, nothing. The hobby is not guaranteed to go up from here, and it could slowly go down. Pavlovich24 says, this is the cheapest cards have been since the pandemic started from what I've seen. So some things are, for sure. Some things are at a near high. Other things are more back to the prices they were when Logan Paul came into the hobby. And Logan Paul actually came in October of that year. So about 4 or 5 months into the pandemic already. That sort of summer, actually, really, when the pandemic first started, you had a lot of influencers and a lot of people come out and say that you shouldn't be buying right now. Don't panic sell. We're going to get through this together. Like, you can go back right now and watch videos on like a lot of your favorite influencer channels, and they'll be saying that sort of thing. Interestingly, though, what I was noticing, and I was buying very heavily during that period because I was noticing that things were just continuing to go up. And I had a lot of theories at that time about people being inside, not spending money on things, stimulus checks. Now, there was definite risk in terms of like people losing jobs, like what the unemployment benefits. There was a lot of uncertainty around that sort of thing, what that was going to look like. But prices were still ticking up throughout that negativity, and that made me like very, very bullish. And so it could have gone terribly wrong, me doing this 100%, but I actually sold quite a bit of stock. This is very, very lucky. Okay? I actually sold a lot of stock before the stock market kind of tanked 40% or whatever it did in those like 3 to 4 weeks. And then I had a lot of cash, and I actually bought a bunch of Pokemon cards, and then I sold a bunch of those Pokemon cards, and then I put it back into stock, and then I caught the stock on the way. It's been a very lucky year for the timing of things, and the fact that the stock market and the Pokemon market have sort of been at opposites a little bit. Some of that is definitely being really engaged and understanding how markets work. A lot of that is just luck and timing. Um, but it can't keep going like this. I'm when you have a lot of luck or when a lot of things go right, you can get sort of this like feeling like you know more than you know, or you can predict more than you can predict, and it's part of why I made that regret video that I made last video. It's like I cannot and nobody can predict like what is going to happen next, and I have my feelings about it, my thoughts about it, my rationality about it. We're all going to share those types of things, but even people who have had a great track record over the past year and a half, 2 years, could be dead wrong because there's a lot to consider. And although I think the Pokemon market, to be completely honest, is a lot simpler, in my opinion, to predict than the stock market, something like that, or is easier to predict in some senses, some of the rhythms and some of the patterns. It's still so, it's just so, and I always go back to this, it is so hard to predict demand. Like, understanding like the consumer income and the amount of money people have, and like the pandemic factors, the fact that people are going to be inside, increased depression, anxiety rates, that they were going to want to collect more, go back to their childhood. The theory that I constantly said, and studying comic books and studying sports cards and studying all these things, that 30-year-olds like to collect what they had when they were 10, that sort of nostalgic revisiting stuff, like all of that lined up so well, right? And so that's great, and you can have all of that, and you can be thoughtful, and like, but there's still predicting like where it's going to go or how much it's going to go up. And you can go back to and watch all my videos, because I think there's probably some interesting ones. I can't stand to hear myself talk, so I can't go back and watch them. But I think there's my memory serves me correct. There's some interesting ones where I was like, I'm not sure if I should sell or not. Like, I feel like there's a lot of manic stuff going on. I think Rafi and I made one together where it was like, should you sell your collection? I think this was like right around the time Logan Paul was entering the hobby. My collection had already tripled or so in value, and I said no, I wasn't going to sell quite yet, even though I'm concerned, because I'm just not sure how high this is going to go, where this demand ceiling is, and I'm very glad that I didn't sell at that time, despite my concerns. But it could have gone a very different way. It's you really, everyone out there, you have got to take personal accountability and responsibility. There are certain people who listen far too much. There are people, I'm sure out there, plenty of people who listen far too much to me, in terms of like, this guy, I'm just going to do what he says and everything's going to be fine, or Scott Pratt, I'm going to do what he says and everything's going to be fine. It's like please do not do that. And you're going to be far better off if you become educated and you can, you get those instincts and you can make those decisions and learn from that in the long run in whatever you do. So, sorry, I'm going on and on and on that, but I think it's important. Okay. Blue Goose Collectibles has an interesting point. I often wonder if some of this market decline has to do with a lot of capital being tied up at PSA. Absolutely, but the other way to think about that, Blue Goose Collectibles, is that yes, a lot of money is tied up there and a lot of cards are tied up there, but someone has to buy those cards once they hit the market in order for those people to get more capital to then buy more cards. And so all of that supply needs to come back on the market, and that is going to lower the price of things also. I hopefully that makes sense. It's not like people have a lot of money in like something completely unrelated to Pokemon and they're just waiting to get that money and then they're going to inject it into Pokemon. It's like other Pokemon people and enthusiasts are going to have to buy those cards at prices so that those people can get the money and then sell stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. Ernesto Alvarez says, hi Jake, can you give your thoughts and opinion on graded comics? They present super nice in the CGC slab and it's Marvel superheroes. I think they're cool. Yeah. I think graded comics. I think comics in general are really fun, are really cool. I might get into them at some point a little bit. I just have so many cards are what I grew up with as a kid. I grew up a little bit with comic books. There was a cool comic shop I used to go to near me, but I more was into cards, both sports cards and Pokemon cards. And so for me, I just have a lot of goals I want to reach in the Pokemon world and in a lot of TCG world and even probably in the sports card world eventually before I would go too heavy into comics. But for example, I bought a bunch of Batman cards, over the past 6 months or so, and Superman cards, like the original 1940 Superman cards and then the original 1966 Topps Batman cards because I really like those characters. And the value of the cards versus the comics, to me, the cards are very undervalued compared to the comics. And as a card collector, I really like the cards. Now, there's a lot of reasons why the comics are a lot more expensive. That's a much more established market over there. Most of the people who are interested in those things have nostalgia and connection to the comic books. But a lot of people don't. And I do think there's a bit of a herd mentality thing going on with that versus, it's like people don't just collect what they like. They just listen to other people and they wait for me to tell you that's a good value and then you go buy it, versus just being like, no, it's a great value because there aren't that many of it and because it's freaking cool and I really like it and I would happily pay this price over and over again, I'm going to skip this no rarity question, Daniel, just because I've talked about it a lot. Tommy Fogel says, hey, Jake, during these times when market values change every day, do you hold on to big purchases or taking big steps while market is correcting itself? No. I buy when something seems undervalued to me, I buy. I don't wait for the absolute bottom. I try to, right? I try to be like, okay, this card is probably at or near its bottom, or this feels like really good value. But as soon as it hits that, like, this is an undervalued item, I start to buy it. And I'm going to keep buying it and slowly buying more and more and more over time. And that's how I build a position in it. It's the same thing I would do with stocks or with anything. I think it's better to think, like, is this card undervalued? Do I think this card should be more valuable? Rather than thinking, like, is it going to fall more? And if I buy now, am I going to lose $5 or $10 more before it goes up $50? It's like that type of stuff. Like, just buy it if you like it, if you want to collect it, or if you think it's going to be a good flip down the line. Just buy it, right? If you really believe that, but you have to believe it. Don't listen to someone else. Christian Diaz says, I just heard a story of a sports group submitter that defaulted on about $1 million in PSA card grading fees. Wow. That's a crazy story. I have not heard that. That's amazing. Wow. That sounds like an absolute disaster. I think what happens is PSA just keeps the cards, right? Or I don't know. And if it's a group submitter, do some get it back? Some do. Ooh, that's a weird. I would love to hear more about what that's all about. Dima P says, hey Jake, what do you think about the 2000 lenticular Pokemon Stadium Action 3Ds? Is that a good hold long term? I hate to answer it this way, but I'm just not sure. I like them. I'm just not sure. Oh, Christian Diaz says, very interesting stories in the sports market too. Apparently people were sending thousands of cards that are completely worthless now. So they are not even paying the graded fees, yeah. Yeah, so PSA is just eating the cost, yeah. And now that PSA has these worthless cards or whatever, yeah. People are it's terrible. I mean, ethically speaking, this is what we talk about when we talk about credit, right? So in some sense, like, these people were obviously either they're just, okay, a couple of things. One, that's a very scummy thing to do. If you send your cards off to PSA, you have, in my opinion, an ethical obligation to pay for those cards. Okay? When you win I feel the same way about when you win an auction you don't want to win, right? You have an ethical responsibility to pay that auction, to just like, I hate it when the seller, I won a really good auction the other day and the seller canceled it. This happens from time to time, right? And then just relisted it immediately, and because he wants more money for it. Okay? And I highly unethical, in my opinion. That's highly unethical. It's highly unethical when you enter into what I view as some sort of like contract or agreement. Like, it is your obligation to fulfill that. Okay? Now, extreme scenarios can happen. So an extreme scenario would be like, I have an extreme medical issue, or someone in my family desperately needs money for some reason, and I default on I can't pay something, and so I have to go bankrupt or whatever, or I can't pay something, so I have to scam someone in order to like feed my family or do some crazy medical bill. That's reasonable. Now, what is not reasonable is if you out there have no money. Okay, this is unethical, and it's harsh, but it's very true. This is very unethical. If you have no money and you send a bunch of cards to get graded at PSA with the idea that when you get them back, you're going to put it all on credit, and then when you get them back, you're going to quickly flip it, you're going to make a bundle and then pay off your credit cards and then keep repeating the process, but you don't actually have any money, and so you're dependent on the cards going up in value, or you're screwed and you're going to screw PSA and you're going to screw other people over. That to me is highly unethical. You should not be doing this. Yeah, first of all, it was just the stupidity. Like, I would watch these videos, man, and it was painful to watch. I watched this one guy opening up. There's this upper deck 90s box of like Michael Jordan Bugs Bunny cards where Michael Jordan is on every single card. Okay, this is a box where there's plenty of this box. It is not an expensive box. Okay, and he was opening up this box. I guarantee this dude and dudes like him were the ones doing this sort of thing. He was opening up this box, and he was looking at every single card. There's no rarity to any of these cards. Every card in the set has Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan on it. And he was saying, I'm grading all of them. And there were cards that had damage on them that he was sending off to grade. He's grading every card, okay? This is an example of someone who has no fundamental understanding of rarity, all right? And he thought he was like a genius in this video. And for someone who, again, it's supply and demand. And there are people out there who are very deep in this, who just have no understanding of supply and of rarity, and the fact that it's so easy to do that, and there's so much of that left out there, and a million people could do that those cards and what you are doing right now is worthless. And if someone buys that from you for a high price, it's just because they're an idiot and you frankly scammed them, really, and you're basically passing off the loss to them eventually. A lot of that happened in Pokemon this year. It was a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing selling to other people who didn't know what they were doing, and a lot of like herd mentality around it where people, and I heard big streamers like XQC and other people say like, just give blatantly false information, like this is rare, like this item is rare, I heard this was rare, Again, who are you listening to? Who are those experts? How deep are they? So, it's a terrible thing. But it's people making really poor decisions, and then having to do really unethical things where they pass off their poor decision onto someone else or some company or some other person, and it sucks. The best thing you can do: try to be an ethical person with integrity. Try to understand and know what you're doing, and make sure you have the money if you're starting a business. Don't take out a bunch of loans and then default on your loans and screw the banks, screw the people. It's things like that happen in life, and I do want to be careful. Like, again, medical things happen, crazy things happen, and if you really know what you're doing and you have a great business, like taking out a loan and maybe something goes wrong and it's not your fault, like things do happen. But yeah, it's unfortunate what people do on credit, and And it's unfortunate that these banks and that these credit card companies, they go after these people and look for these people, the people who have these types of spending habits and these poor spending habits, and just spend deeper and deeper into debt. And yeah, nasty business. Christopher Lorella says, thoughts on Pokemon through these Fed interest hikes? Yeah, I don't know. I am not sure how that is going to affect, Pokemon. Obviously, in the stock market, it's had a, just the Omicron fears and the way the Fed has been responding to some strength that they've been seeing, in the overall economy. By raising some of these or making plans to raise some of these, announcing plans to raise some of these historically low interest rates. There's a lot of short-term anxiety and concern. It's part of why we've seen a lot of the stock market, do really badly over the past few weeks. A lot of companies, their prices going way down. That could be a short-term trend, or it could be a long-term trend. I have no idea. We'll have to see. The stock market's crazy, I think, in a lot of ways. And there's tons of herd mentality and tons of just computerized trading and a lot of just like crazy price swings. And yeah, I have the majority of my money in Berkshire Hathaway and in, just people, companies, managers that I believe in. That I think are really doing the research and understand where value is and are unattractive to like hype monstery type investors and stonkers. Blue Goose says, I think when kids grow up, they're going to gravitate to rarity and vintage. They will, because that's how every other hobby works. So now modern could provide rare things, but I guarantee you, like the sports card collectors today, if modern didn't have these like one-of-ones and all of these different rare parallels, for sure, as you can see, like the base parallel, or just, sorry, not even the parallel, just like the base card, became very expensive of Zion and Luka, although that's collapsed because of the lack of rarity. But the stuff like that the kids want, outside of those one-of-ones generally are like the Michael Jordan rookie card, the Hall of Fame rookies, right? Because they understand the historicness, the value of those things, even though they didn't grow up with those cards. They didn't grow up with those players in some cases. Not so much Michael Jordan, but particularly when we look back into, Kareem and Larry and, and this whole idea of like the kids are just going to want the modern, going to want the nostalgia, going to want the cards that they had as a kid. There's certainly going to be something to that, but generally people want the most historic, the rarest, the most expensive stuff. But it doesn't mean they're not also going to want, some of the stuff they grew up as a kid. They're probably going to want both. Christian Diaz says, the only thing that can save some of these alt arts is the rarity of them. They're really hard to pull. Yeah, they're definitely hard to pull. Pretty hard to grade. I think they're cool cards. They're just expensive. Do I own any Animal Crossing cards? I do not. I didn't even know that was a thing. A lot of good conversation, comments here. I'm working my way through. What do you think about EX PSA 10s? Undervalued, overvalued? Yeah, I mean, these questions, like, they're great. They've gone up a lot. I don't think that I look at these things and I'm like, oh my god, they're so undervalued. I think if you like them as a collector, you really want them. I think if Pokemon does well, they'll go up over time. They might have a little bit more room to retrace. They may not. A lot of the stuff I'm buying, I feel like is more likely at the bottom. But they're great cards. I own a lot of them. I will be buying more in the future. I'm not in a rush, but they're really great, cool. Particularly, I think some of the first appearance ones, key Pokemon, these types of things. Vandy Flips Pokemon says, thoughts on Harry Potter WotC PSA cards? Low pop just because no one can grade right now, or is there rarity in the first few sets? There is not rarity. There's a lot of the sets. There's a lot of all of the sets. The only set that has some rarity to it is the Chamber of Secrets. That is a pretty low printed set. That's part of why the Chamber of Secrets boxes are so expensive, and even quite a bit more expensive than like the original base set. With Hogwarts on it. So yeah. There's a lot of that sealed. There's a lot going to be opened and graded, and it'll be interesting to see like the quality of those cards. Like if people really start getting into it and grading more. I think it's fun. I think opening that product, grading it. I definitely am going to own a bunch of Harry Potter graded cards over the next 5 to 10 years. I like it. I love it. It's fun. If the metaverse can have digital yachts go for millions, I think there's a possibility for massive growth in the hobby in the future, yeah. Oh my god, the metaverse. Whew. Let's see here. Charles Cold Club President says, do you think vintage... Oh my god, it just jumped to the bottom on me. Ah, man. Can I find it? I hate this chat. How it works. Oh no, I think it's probably gone. Ah, that sucks, man. Yo, if you're still here, please ask your question at the bottom again and I'll answer it, because you were also saying that it's your first time watching the stream, being able to watch live and ask a question. Ay. Brutal. I'm so sorry. I am so behind in this chat. It is an overwhelming amount of questions, and I really appreciate all the questions, guys. Jake from Palatine, I'm just going to have to start it where the chat is here. Okay, Jake from Palatine. What are your main resources for checking prices of cards? Do you check eBay prices, TCG Player, question mark. Yeah, eBay, TCG Player are definitely my two main resources, 100%. TCG Player for particularly, they do have some graded cards that they saw in there, but particularly for ungraded. I really like having that baseline raw, particularly when I'm looking at modern. I really like looking there because, near mint and modern on TCG Player has a very high probability of being like PSA 9, PSA 10, like fairly mint quality. Near mint vintage could mean a vast variety of things in terms of quality, anywhere from like a PSA 5 to like a PSA 10. Very, very rarely PSA 10. So that's why it's kind of harder to because a PSA 9 vintage card could be worth thousands more or hundreds more or $10, $20, $30 more depending on which card. And on eBay you can actually you can put pictures on TCG Player, and some people do, but oftentimes you don't have that. And on TCG Player you can put that, but on eBay there are those pictures there for you, so you can really check sold listings and get a better sense of really what what kind of condition this card is in, and a 9 is going to sell for, as I said, much more than a 7, for example. But yeah, eBay is great. Obviously, sold listings. And then I get a lot of price checks just from my friends. People send me a lot of info. They sell something interesting. They hear about something interesting. People send me info all the time. And I love that. So a lot of it is helpful and interesting. I have lots of friends and other people. Obviously Dan, my partner on the Patreon, is selling a lot and gives me a lot of good price data and info on what he's selling, his cards for, and that stuff's very valuable. G.I. Joe to the moon, Kevin. Let's see. Chevel says the problem with that strategy, Jake, and I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, what I said, but is if you recoup and put it in a poorer vehicle, if you don't have that much wealth, you're possibly one bad move away from collapsing. Yeah, and I think, and I'm guessing you're saying when I said, spend $2,000 or something on a collection, these types of things. I mean, what I would say is that certainly if you buy a terrible collection or you don't really know what you're doing, I would not, if I was just starting, I would not be spending all of my money on things. I would be looking, to put smaller purchases and see how I do with those and see what sells and get a better sense of what's going on. For me, though, I would look for a large $2,000 purchase. Now, again, because it would be a lot of different cards and graded cards and maybe some sealed in it possibly, and a bunch of singles, that actually gives me a lot of variety that I can sell off some of it, take some money, maybe even put some of that money aside, recoup the 2,000 pretty quickly and then put it into something else, and then maybe some of it sells slower, and then later on I'm, that can sell, I can get a little additional money, I can choose to, diversify that or take it out or put it into stocks or whatever, or just put it in the bank account, keep some cash for a bigger and better deal. A lot of us did that. That's how a lot of us built, someone like Z&G Emporium, I think James, that's all he did. That's how he built his entire empire, I'm not sure he ever put in money, significant money into the hobby, added significant money into the hobby. I might be wrong about that. I certainly, as time went on, I became more bullish and I put a lot of money into Pokemon that was not just coming from the hobby. A lot of money. From my paychecks and also selling stock and from my savings and other sorts of things. Hey, Pokebar, nice to see you. Evolve Collectibles. Let's see. Nice to see you here, Danny. Big fans of yours here. Let's see. Casual collector saying, just to clarify, just saying there is an aggressive style and a more patient and efficient. I hope I came across positive. Thank you. I missed your earlier comment. I think it got cut off. I'm sorry. Someone saying anti-Semitic comments in here. Uh-oh. Yeah, as you guys know, I am Jewish. I have to say, like, the whole, like, G.I. Jew, like, Poke-Jew stuff, it's clever, it's funny, and he does call himself the Poke-Jew, so it's fine. But, like, when I read that, I do, like, perk up a little bit, and I'm like, I hope people don't just, like, hate Jews now, and, like, are thinking all Jews are, like... And I think he's Jewish, and I also think Kahuna is Jewish. I might be wrong about that, but Probstein is Jewish. Like, Jews are, like, we're, like, human beings. We're not all the same. And like, I don't know. I worry. It's one of those things when it's like a fellow Jew does something potentially that isn't great, and it almost gives actual anti-Semites ammunition to come after like Jews and people who like, part of my faith is like, Judaism is a beautiful faith and teaches, very high ethics and morality around honesty and truthfulness and charity and all sorts of things. So it's without going too deep, I do when I see some of that stuff, and I worry, and online can be so toxic, and obviously there is anti-Semitism and racism online, a lot more online than people actually say in day-to-day life offline. So of course every race, every religious group gets, irrational negativity and hatred at them online. So people will just look for anything to hurt someone, over. Okay. What do you think of creators brushing their controversies under the rug? Unlisted made a post basically saying none of this is my fault. Left came back and acts like nothing happened. Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's effective. I think Mealy Pops, for example, like Mealy Pops, to my understanding, has never acknowledged anything, has never talked publicly, and has just paid Shine back to his credit, and is just trying to like move on and be like very quiet, and knows that if he comes out and apologizes or admits wrongdoing, that clip will be in people's heads, will sear into people's heads, and people will remember him and think about him a lot more, and because he wasn't in that Logan Paul video, he can more easily kind of move on, or hopefully move on from this. Like, tactically speaking, I really understand that approach from a business perspective. Morally or ethically speaking, it's a bit dubious for me. I think that if you do something wrong, it is your obligation to come and apologize to people publicly. And if people mistreat you for that, or gang up for you, or jump on for you, to me, it's worth it. It's worth it. Now, maybe he didn't do anything wrong. Maybe it was all card kahuna, maybe. But again, like, he should have done his due diligence more, and we don't need to go relive all the Logan Paul stuff. But there's, and as far as Unlisted Leaf, Unlisted Leaf's way of handling this situation was really bad. Really, really bad. Now, he, evidently he got a lot of death threats and people just behaving terribly and horribly, and I'm sure that does happen. I mean, I've gotten death threats on my channel, and people wishing like harm on me and my family and all sorts of things because of my, at times strong opinions or what have you. So people, and whether those things are in any way sort of real or just sort of wanting to, troll someone or make them feel bad because they think it's funny. Whatever, putting that aside, the way that he handled it, not really apologizing and then like overreacting and saying, I'm just going to quit Pokemon forever, having that sort of like weird reaction, and I'm going to sell my car, for those who, like, it just would have been nice if he came out and explained like what happened, why he did that. Now, again, I don't know of any example of large influencers anywhere who do that. I mean, can you guys think of any examples of a large influencer who really seemed to acknowledge and you really believed it, like authentically, that they were really authentically sorry, versus like they were doing some sort of like fake apology to like retain their audience or to move on from the situation? Like, I can't think of any examples of big influencers or people, but again, I'm not a huge social media person. Before this experience and before doing this, I really didn't watch any of these people and follow any of these channels, but Now all that being said, you have to be careful judging things and judging people when you have never been in the situation that they're in. So, for example, nobody here, I know Danny was here earlier. Danny might be the biggest influencer among us in the chat tonight that I saw, at least. But even Danny, who I don't know, gets 10, 20,000 people watching on his videos, or most of his videos, and that's nothing, like having 2 million subscribers, and so kind of knowing the pressure and also having your livelihood being completely connected to it. Danny would understand that, obviously. Although he also has a business and sells cards, so his livelihood is not connected to like the views and the ad revenue like Unlisted Leafs probably is. But yeah, going back to that sort of like, it's hard. Be careful judging people when you are not in their shoes. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what they have to lose. You don't know what their PR teams are telling them. All these types of things. That being said, it puts us in a tough situation because you see something you don't like, you see something unethical, and you have one of two choices. You can give the benefit of the doubt and you can say, you know what, I'm going to trust this person. I think they should have done it differently, but I don't really understand what they're going through or why they're doing what they're doing. And so I'm going to just choose to be like, okay, I'm going to forgive. Or you can say, I don't think I would have done that in that situation. And I think that shows their true character. And I don't, like this, or I don't think this person is that ethical anymore. Or it concerns me about their ethicalness. I think both of those things are not unreasonable. But I know in my mind, I have experienced times where I judged an influencer, I judged someone, and then I got sort of bigger, and I realized that I was overly harsh and negative, on an influencer's language or what they had to do to start a business or these types of things, and I didn't really understand the grind of all of this until I started doing it myself. And with that greater perspective, I was more just empathetic and sympathetic to kind of streamers and online people kind of making mistakes or putting a foot in their mouth or so. Justin Pan says, hey Jake, just wondering if you'd be willing to pass on a general baseline price for a middle-of-the-range holo from base set unlimited. Yeah, I really don't know exactly what the market price is. I'm personally not really buying. I don't buy like single unlimited raw, like near minty, ungraded cards. I would buy like large lots of those. I would be looking to pay a few dollars a card in a very large lot. I would assume if you're buying them individually, and if they really look near mint to mint, it's going to obviously vary widely depending on the card, right? If it's a Charizard, it could be $400 or $500. If it's a Magneton, or it might be $20, $15, $10 if it's a little bit lower grade. So in terms of raw, what it looks like. Twice Big Jake needs to do a video on baby shinies. Justin Pence, I saw it. I saw that you said raw price. I got you. Some of these questions I've already kind of touched on tonight. I'm going to go for another 30 minutes, guys. I'll do my best to get through as many of these as I can. Mason says stained glass birds are the new ancient Mew. Changed my mind. Yeah, I mean, probably not. I think the magic of Ancient Mew, Mason, part of it was that when we were kids, there was no Mew Hollow. Now, Japanese had a Mew Hollow in the fossil, but in English we didn't. And there was all this like lore around Mew in the Game Boy game, and then the Ancient Mew card was like the way to get Mew, and people thought that card was worth like $1 billion. Like people thought that card was super rare for a while, and it was like the biggest chase card. That type of lore and experience and connection that a lot of adults have to that card because of their experience as a kid does not exist and will not exist for the Hidden Birds. Now, the Hidden Birds card is gorgeous. That Stained Art card is awesome. Stained Glass, excuse me, is an awesome card, but it's never going to have that type of story and connection for people. People will really like it, though. It's a great card. Kevin Clear says, I swear, if you gave people free gold bars, they would complain they were too heavy. Pat Meister says, if you were dealt a bad hand in life, I could understand why someone would turn to scamming to make bank. Yeah, it's a difficult moral question. Depends what you mean by a bad hand. A lot of people, their issues in their lives, they have a lot of control over, and you know, there's certainly a place for choice and personal responsibility as well. So it's a very individual. You know, I'm a therapist and I work with individuals all the time, and there are some people that I will work with that you know, it's like I feel like they're really you know, we're at a place where they are really in great control of themselves and have, you know, are working extremely hard and have made incredible improvements, but there are things that have happened to them that are very, very difficult to get over, that is no fault of their own, and or born into circumstances and had things, you know, happen to them that were terrible, or their genetics. They had, you know, certain genetic issues or a proclivity to neuroticism or depression or anxiety that other people don't have. None of that stuff is your fault, and certainly makes life more difficult in a variety of ways. And I certainly have worked with people that I would describe are really very ethical, you know, people making very good ethical decisions, and, you know, are still struggling. But then there are plenty of examples of people where it's like, you know, they're making choices that are just incredibly scummy, and, you know, and don't have very much remorse or care. And, you know, we can get into a whole nature versus nurture debate, and it's, you know, it's very complicated, and obviously no one really knows. And we can get free choice debates that, well, even those people, it's not their fault, it's their upbringing, it's their parenting, it's all the stuff that they weren't in control over, and now, you know, everything is predetermined, and, you know, and then you're going to have the left-wing views and the right-wing views, and my personal perspective on that stuff is, as long as you understand both sides of that argument and both sides of that understanding, I feel very respectful of kind of wherever you rest on that. I think it's people who are very strongly on one side of that argument who don't understand the merits of the other argument that I worry about. Because I think when you understand both sides of that, you end up somewhere in the middle where you believe both in the importance of personal responsibility as well as the importance of like sympathy and empathy, and not blaming some, or not criticizing or condemning someone for things that are out of their control or somewhat out of their control. So Scribble says, hey Jake, have you opened any of the new Marvel Weiss Schwartz? I have not. I'm looking forward to opening some of it, hopefully. I wish it was coming to English, but I guess they can't get the license because it's too expensive or something like that, I've heard. I think Nate was telling me that. So, yeah, the Japanese might be the only option, at least for now, to open that, and I would like to. It looks really cool. If we got Poke Chloe with Pratt, we need Pokenomics with Island Boys. What do you guys think would happen if I had a conversation with the Island Boys? Do you think it would get deep? Do you think it would get real, or do you think they would just put on an act? You think I could connect with them on a human level? Fistrick says, interesting question we haven't had yet for a while. Do you think any large buyouts will happen in the near future in Pokemon? Gosh, large buyouts. It's a really interesting question. I'm wondering if eventually buyouts are going to start happening more on Modern. That would be a place I'd be interested to see, like on TCG Player and stuff like that. So, particularly if as prices continue to get really low, it becomes like with a few $1,000s, you can very easily buy out items from there. So, I don't know. I do not do large buyouts. Per se, and again, it depends how we define these things, but I don't say, oh, this card is really undervalued, I'm just going to buy all of them that are in stock right now. Now, what I will say is this card is very undervalued, and I'm going to buy a bunch of them that are below a certain price point that I like, and I'm going to buy every one of them that is below this price point. That type of thing I will do. And then if people keep listing them below that price point, I'll continue to buy them. But generally, I pick a very low price point, and most of the time, I don't get that many. Like, I've never gotten more than, I don't even remember, maybe 20 of a card or something. Oreo says, what do you think about investing in a booster box versus investing in the most valuable chase card in a set instead? It's all going to depend. Generally speaking, I tend to value the chase cards and high grades versus the booster box in most situations relative to what the hobby tends to value things at. To be completely honest with you guys, I think that there are a number of Magic guys and sports guys and other sorts of people who don't actually like Pokemon, and a bunch of other people who hoard the sealed product, because they're sort of from that camp, and the Magic camp of like sealed product is more valuable. Now, it's very different than Magic. Magic, a lot of the sealed product becomes valuable because people like to draft and like the experience of opening the new product and then playing some of these old sets. That doesn't really exist in Pokemon in the same sort of way, and certainly not to the extent that it does in Magic. I think that a lot of the collectors push up the prices of the singles, and more of the speculators push up the prices of the booster boxes. Now, that being said, and people always hear this stuff, and they're like, what? I'm a collector, and I collect sealed. I collect sealed myself. I like having some sealed. It's fun. Okay? There are people out there who genuinely prefer sealed. They're huge collectors of sealed, and they freaking love Pokemon. This is not a gatekeeping. I'm not talking about that. There are plenty of examples where this wouldn't be true. But overall, I think you have more of those people in the booster box world, because I think it's a lot more obvious and easy. It's very easy for Rudy to buy $250,000 of Trillium Drains, like he said, right? And he doesn't even know anything about Pokemon. He doesn't know the chase cards. He knows literally nothing, right? Or almost nothing. He might play it up a little bit in his videos that he knows nothing, but that might be legit. You couldn't do that. The stuff that I do, the plays that I make, you can't do that with that sort of level of knowledge. Like, you have to be deep in the hobby. You have to know a lot of stuff to know which singles, to know which grades to buy, to know which special PSA cards. And I do think that that gives me an edge, that sort of knowledge. And I think the people buying the stuff I'm buying often are more engaged and are going to be here longer and are looking to flip it a lot less and are buying things more for as a collector. And so I think all of that stabilizes the prices. My personal opinion. I think more businesses and investor types, purely investor types, do more of the sealed product. I think particularly this year, and I think Rudy has had an effect on that, saying that over and over again. And Pokemon is a highly collector's hobby versus Magic, which is a much higher player, community. And that's why I think that there will be going forward more interest in getting those chase cards, those key cards in high grades, even when there's a lot of it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to stonk up hugely, but again, we talked about evolutions in CP6 earlier. Someone sharing, I can buy the CP6 hollows already graded for like 15 to $20, he said, versus buying the CP6 box for $2,500. Which one do I think is better value? Definitely the graded cards. I think the price of the graded cards versus the price of the box is insane. Pac-Man says, Jake, did you collect as a child? I did, yeah. I started with a lot of sports early on in like elementary school. And then when Pokemon came out, I went hard into Pokemon. Oh, wait, maybe I'm wrong about that. No, I think I collected sports first. I think first it was sports, then it was Pokemon, then it was Beanie Babies, I think. And then it went back to sports. I think I was kind of doing sports the whole way. I would say Pokemon was the most enjoyment, though, and the most intense, and the thing I was most obsessed about out of all of those sort of collector fads. But I was always like a collector type, so all of those and I collected Pogs too, and Slammers and stuff before I think that was the first thing. So I was always, some of us are just sort of collectors, and I kind of went from one fad or one thing that everyone did to the next. Michael says, hey, what's up, Jake? Hope you're having a good day. You too, Michael. Thanks for stopping by. Patmeister says, to be honest, I wish I had listened more to you because I now have 99% of my net worth in cards. You can do something about that if you'd like. But I understand it can be very hard to sell things. And I mean, the thing that I do talk about with people, again, not a financial advisor here, but when you are very young and you have very high income earning potential and are already earning high income, although the money you're putting in cards, if you put that into stocks, on average, you could double your money every 7 years with that compounding interest and be much further ahead potentially financially. But who cares? Money, hoarding a huge amount of money and wealth is not what's important in life. What's important in life is having enough money, ideally, so that you feel free, that you feel comfortable, and that you're also really enjoying the things you're doing. And just because you could make more money in the stock market or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't make enough in cards. And particularly when you're young and if you have a good salary and good job prospects, who cares? If you lose 10 years of investing, yeah, you might lose $5-10 million. If you focused your whole life on accumulating wealth and were investing studiously, one day that could be $5-10 million. But as long as you have $5 million at the end of it, although inflation may make a lot of this stuff not worth that much, does that extra $5-10 million really matter, or do all of your experiences in the Pokemon community and all these things matter more? And that's a personal decision, and it goes to that regret video I was talking about in the last one. Personal decision. And who knows? Pokemon may outperform. I don't know. May outperform the market. Plenty of things might. I don't know. Michael Smith says, so Jake, when are you going to make a top 5 cards to invest in 2022? Gonna skip that video. Okay, we're doing about 20 more minutes, guys, or 19 more minutes. Go till 1 o'clock my time. And then I gotta get some sleep because I got work in the morning. My voice is also getting tired from talking so much. Okay, we're now... I'm now at the point in chat that was probably like an hour and a half ago. I'm going to skip to the bottom. Sorry for the million questions I missed. Jeez. If you have questions, put them in the bottom. I'm going to move to the bottom of chat and respond to things. Okay. Grandpa Joe, what do you think about the idea that Japan is still a largely underutilized source of rare cards? Say TCG player hired a team to live there, work there, get all exclusive new Japanese exclusives. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely money there. There's money that, you know, you have people sourcing a bunch of like the new hot promo from there, and you know, flipping it and or slowly grading it, slowly selling them onto the market, making profit. But the Japanese market is hot in Japan. People love Pokemon in Japan, and people are paying extremely high prices. So if you travel to Japan and like went in the store, there are some cards like there might be Masakis and Gold Stars and all sorts of Japanese things. Gold Stars are obviously not Japanese exclusive, but you know, Japanese versions of each of those EX sets. That they're selling for more than they are selling here, or very similar. So you can't just. It's not like it's. There used to be a time where you could find that more. Now you can still go onto Buyee and Yahoo Japan and find great deals and source cards and make some money there. I'm not saying that, but it's different now. There's a lot more competition from other Western sellers bidding up the prices, and there's a lot more competition from Japanese interest, and the Japanese sellers understand what they have a lot more now than I think what they did, you know, a number of years ago. Let's see other questions here, guys. Jason says, do you buy cards direct from Japan? If so, have you ever bought any cards that were in better or worse condition than you were expecting? Yeah, I've bought some cards over the years from like Yahoo Japan, Buyee, but not that much, surprisingly. A lot of the Japanese stuff and a lot of the stuff I have is just from eBay, PWCC auctions, Facebook groups, Instagram, buying directly from people. It makes me nervous buying particularly like high-end stuff, and I'm just a very cautious person, and I don't take big gambles, so I don't buy like raw trophy cards and then hope that they're like in really good condition, and then they get here and that has like a bend in it or a dent, and you know, and then you're like, what the, you know, oof. So there's just so many good opportunities like that. I'm just patient and I wait for things that feel like a sure thing. Am I a fan of Top Series 1 checklist cards from Topps? I'm not a big Topps fan. It's okay. Again, that's very subjective. If you like Topps, you should collect, invest, speculate, do Topps. I think my thing with Topps is that because I didn't collect it as a kid, and two, for me, it doesn't have the quality of the art, the sort of like interesting sort of time period and pre-Pokemon, in America, stuff that like Topsoon or Cardass or Meiji or some or even like Vending Series has, it just doesn't feel as good for me as that stuff. Although I like Tops, I am a Tops collector of like Tops old wax boxes and stuff like that. I certainly like it, just not quite as much as the market does, particularly the chrome stuff. The chrome stuff tends to be really cool. And I do own some, so I do have some that I picked up over the years. What do you think about graded evolutions right now? I don't know. I feel like I probably shared my thoughts on. It's fairly cheap, as I think it should be. So, and there's going to be more and more and more of it coming back. There's still a ton of it. I mean, a massive amount of it got graded at CGC. So, and a massive amount is still being opened all the time and will continue to be graded, I think. Darth Grader says, any opinion on Raffi's favorite or other Decipher products from a Pokenomics standpoint? Are Austin Power cards going to stunk? Or will we be dead? Yeah, I don't think Austin Powers cards are going to stunk. I do think it's a really cool box. You can get it for $15 right now on Hillside. I always say Hillside. Hills Wholesale Gaming. I think it's a cool display piece. At that price, it's not something that, like, I don't think the cards inside are particularly cool. It's fun. It's goofy. It's fun to open. It's a joke type thing. I put it in the same category as, like, Mega Man, Street Racer, all these types of things that I just don't think have... I don't think the cards inside are that interesting. I don't think collecting it's particularly fun. It's cool owning kind of like an old box with stuff from our childhood. In my opinions on Decipher products, I like it. I just don't love it. I think a lot of people who are super into it, probably you included, like it a little bit more than me. And so for me, the prices were better on the Harry Potter, on the even like the Middle Earth, some of the LOTR stuff, Lord of the Rings stuff, and Marvel for me because of how much... Now, I really like Star Wars, but the Decipher Star Wars cards were there was more of a following for that, and those were already decently expensive. Now, I understand that they've gone up a lot, and I did try and buy one of every box at one point, and I just was unable to find them. It was hard, and I was unable to get deals that I felt really good about, so I just sort of missed out. I don't own any at all of that. It's one of the only things I don't own any of, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, so eventually, hopefully one day, I will own some. Moments with Nick says that he can confirm he lives in Japan and some Japanese cards are cheaper abroad. Yep. John, the TCG Baptist, says, what are the top 3 TCGs you spent money on in the past month? Pokemon, number 1. Number 2 is Magic. And that's it, I think. In the last month, I don't think I bought anything else. Yeah, those are the only 2 I think I bought just in this last month. Magic is a decent second. I didn't buy any Pokemon or almost any Pokemon for about 6 months, other than a couple Worlds promos here and there, and so I had some making up to do. I've been having fun with it. Ruse Raptor says, what's your favorite set in Pokemon? Base set, if I had to pick only one set. I also really like Neo Genesis. I really like Neo Rev is great. I particularly like the Shining Gyarados and Shining Magikarp in that set. E-Series is great. I like all 3 of the E-Series sets. What else? I really like some of the early EX original Nintendo sets. I really like EX Dragon. EX Team Rocket, has got to be up there. What else do I really, really like? Those are probably all my top ones. I really like Hidden Fates. Um, I think Evolving Skies is really a great set. I think it's really fun. A lot of really cool chase cards in that. Cosmic Eclipse is good. Those are some of my. There are some good ones like Supreme Victors. I really like really all the Plasma sets, but Plasma Blast, Plasma Storm, really great sets. Those are some different ones I like over the years. Team Rocket, the original Team Rocket's a great set. I love Jungle. The gyms, man, there's just endless sets I love. And then on the Japanese side, there's so many more sets that I love. I love the Versus series. That has got to be up there for me. The Vending, Meiji, Topsun, Cardass. There's just so many. I'm someone who just loves and really likes so many different things in Pokemon that. Let's see. Don't want to miss any questions here. What are your Anton Timotson says? What are your thoughts on buying first edition Shadowless cards in less good condition and grading? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's opportunity there. It all depends on your eye. I think that I've been buying in particular, and I try not to share that much, but I've been buying some Shadowless hollows. I think that they're and non-hollows too. I think Shadowless. There's just some really, really cheap Shadowless cards that I've been seeing that I've been sort of picking up. I'm a big fan of Shadowless personally. It's also a subjective thing. I just really like Shadowless. So, yeah, and if you can definitely buy raw collections and you can get them at really good values, why not? Goes to what Mason said. I'm sort of open to all of these things. It's just about getting it at a really good value. Part of why I shared what I was buying, and I talk more about this stuff in Patreon, is certainly to give examples, but it's also about what is available. It's what am I seeing that is coming up on deals? So there are certain periods where I think that modern, there were no deals in modern. Everyone was just super about everything, and everything was way overpriced. And there were a few things still in vintage that I could buy. And then there are times where it feels there really aren't a lot of deals. Right now, there are very few PSA 10 first edition hollows coming up on market, at all. And this is the stuff we go over more in Patreon and some specifics, and data to back this stuff up. But there just aren't that many, whereas there's a ton of low-end CGC coming on the market right now. So generally speaking, you want to buy the stuff where the market's being flooded, and you don't want to buy the stuff that isn't, generally speaking. That isn't always the case. There's a lot of nuance, and that's why I can't just say, yes to any one question. It always requires a lot of explanation. Seth James says, hey Jake, for English base set hollows, how do you see Shadowless and first edition cards being valued relative to the unlimited 10 hollows? If I had to pick one as undervalued, I'd pick Shadowless, but they've been valued like this for a long time. So I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I think for me personally, I've always felt that Shadowless of the three is the most undervalued. Particularly actually I was going to say particularly the high graded ones, but even the middle graded. Flux Cap TCR, just skip to the bottom, says, Jake, are you a master set guy? I don't need it. I like it. I like to have it. I'm very patient, so eventually I do want to have master sets of everything. But for example, I have all these binders here that are filled with, close to master sets of every WotC set, in first edition, in unlimited, plus extra copies, and all the E series, a lot of the I pulled cards out over the years to grade, and I haven't necessarily like filled them back out, and so eventually I have to go back in there and fill out the binders. There's lots of spaces now, and it doesn't like really upset me or bother me. It's sort of like I'll get to it. It's collecting is the enjoyment of doing it, right? It's the process, and it's setting new goals and then working to sort of achieve them over time. It doesn't drive me crazy to like not have it perfect or not have it achieved, luckily. And I don't get any OCD in my collecting, fortunately, which is a common affliction in collectors. Fortunately, I do not have that. I'm not very like, I need everything to like have the same grade, or I need everything to be the same condition. I don't feel that. I feel it a little maybe, but not nearly as strongly as others. And I'm definitely not like a master set guy in the sense that, I probably would rather in certain cases. I do think I'm a set guy overall, and it's part of why I do collect like the less popular Pokemon. And I'm also just a big fan of Pokemon. I like the less popular Pokemon when other people don't like them. I'm fans of all these Pokemon, but there are certain cards or certain things that I buy doubles and triples of because I just really love that Pokemon or really love that card. And I don't need to buy doubles and triples of everything. I like one set. I don't need like multiple sets. I don't feel that need. There are certain cards I just really like having lots of, so I don't know. And then there's sort of like your extreme master set guys that I need like every card in PSA 10. I need every reverse holo, every reverse holo of every card. I'm certainly not like that. I never, when I did the E-Series sets, I never tried to get all the reverse holos also. I always like having reverse holos, but I never I didn't need like one of everything. It's just so hard to do. Ross Hutton says, do you collect any sports cards? Yeah, I do, but very few and mostly just kind of cheaper stuff from my childhood. Do you own any BGS Black Label cards that you have personally submitted? Nope, not that I've personally submitted. In fact, I have never submitted to BGS. I am probably going to submit to them some DBZ stuff eventually and maybe a few MTG cards, but yeah, so certainly have never gotten a Black Label because of that. What's your favorite Pokemon card? Yeah, I definitely don't have any specific answer for that. If I had to pick just one, man. So the cards that come into my head are like base set Alakazam, like just a shadowless base set Alakazam. The Shining Gyarados from Neo Rev. Dragonite. I just love Dragonite, but I guess the fossil Dragonite. I really love Dragonair from base set, just the rare, the non-holo rare. It's one of my favorite cards in the hobby. So nothing modern for me touches vintage. As much as I love the alternative arts and I love modern and Hidden Fates and all this stuff, and it's really fun. Part of my argument has always been I'm a little weirded out by like people who are my age who their favorite cards are modern when they collected when they were a kid, or they say that their favorite cards are modern, because how can you like a modern card as much as a card that you've known your whole life and connected to on such an emotional, personal level? It's just a little weird to me. It's part of why I just never really believed it. It just felt like people like hyping it up and over the last couple of years. Sakari here. Nice to see ya. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'm answering one more question, and then we're calling it, guys. All right, thoughts on Amazing Rares 5 to 10 years from now? I think if we're lucky, and if things work out well, in 5 to 10 years from now, Amazing Rares will be Like the cheaper ones will be like $5 a card raw. Higher upper end, like $10 maybe, maybe 15 to 20, maybe 10 to 20, like very, very upper end. But probably $5. And your graded cards are looking at like not that much more than they're going for now. Maybe like double in some cases. Which would not be bad. Like that's if we're sort of lucky and fortunate. There's just so many of those cards. There's so much of these sets left. They may reprint all of, like, every set that had it. Like, Vivid Voltage might get another reprint. Maybe not, hopefully not at this point. I don't want them to be reprinting any more Vivid Voltage. Hopefully Shining Fates doesn't get reprinted too much more. I think there's enough for people to enjoy now. So we're going to end for tonight. If you can support me, I really appreciate it. You can support me on Patreon if you appreciate all of this knowledge and free content and opinions. You get more on Patreon as well as a great Discord community. It thanks me for what I do and, helps me kind of sustain this and stay engaged. I really appreciate everyone who decides to do that. Building a really nice community there. We're up to like 240 people now. You get the Discord, you get the monthly Zoom call where we actually get to talk and hang out as a group, and we get to actually like have debates and share opinions, which is phenomenal. And hopefully we'll just get better and better over time as people become more comfortable. We're also adding into the Patreon. I'm going to be paying some people from the Pokemon community and sharing some of it, some of the money and people who I think are experts in certain areas, things that I may not know. We're going to be bringing them in the future. To do, an hour presentation, kind of these like high-end, highbrow stuff that maybe they don't do on their channel, or they don't do it, as sort of like, high-end isn't quite the right word, but just very, for people who are, I think generally speaking, and everyone is welcome in the Patreon, and I think people who are newer into the hobby, please come in the Patreon and learn. It's an extremely friendly space. People are amazingly generous with their information and happy to share. But generally speaking, I think we err on sort of the more experienced side, and so it would be nice to bring some people in and give some really really helpful stuff there. So really appreciate that. If you don't want to do that and you get some valuable, you can, click on my affiliate link always, down below when you're purchasing anything on eBay. It costs you nothing. I get a percentage of the purchase, which, again, just helps me sustain this and the time and effort I put into this. And you can subscribe, like the videos, all that sort of stuff. Again, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Appreciate all of you guys asking amazing questions tonight, just hanging out. I'm having a blast running this channel. As you can see, I've been making a lot of content recently because it's been really, really fun, and I hope it's been fun and great for all of you guys as well. So I will be back shortly. Our Patreon Zoom thing this month is going to be at the end of the month, the last Sunday of every month we try to do it. So I think it's the 30th, I want to say, and otherwise, I will, keep making this content as well, because I do like, sharing and engaging on this platform as well. Okay. Till next time, guys. Everyone have a great night.